Welcome back to the BJJ Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Ford. My guest today is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's also a black belt in Judo. He's a Los Angeles Open black belt masters gold medalist at weight and absolute. He's also a two-time American Nationals silver medalist, once at weight and absolute, and he's a New Orleans Open silver medalist. He's the founder and rhythm guitarist of the wildly successful metal band Five Finger Death Punch. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to be joined today by Zoltan Bathory. How are you today, Zoltan?
Very good, my brother.
Excellent.
That was quite a list of,
That was, hey man, it's good. It's a good list. And I always, we were talking off air about this. I'm so impressed when I see people that have such a demanding schedule like yours, who are able to get out there and compete and train often. So man, that makes the list all that much more impressive, man. So I'm stoked to talk to you today. I love your music, man. Looking forward to getting to hear how you got into jiu-jitsu. So let me kick off by asking my initial question that I always ask. Tell us about where you're from originally and what your life was like before you got into martial arts.
All right. Well, I got into martial arts pretty early, so I can start early. So I grew up in Hungary. In Hungary, Hungary was a socialist communist country at the time. And I was that kid. I was into martial arts, even though we were sort of secluded from the rest of the world. It was still seeping in there. So I was a big Bruce Lee fan. I was making my own throwing stars and nunchucks and smacking myself in the face. I was that kid, right? and throwing, literally we were throwing crazy throwing stars at each other that we made in metal shop. It was kind of crazy.
Amazing.
And, everybody's going to the hospital all the time. So that was no TVs, no computers, we just beating the crap out of each other. And so, Hungary being a communist country, it's, a lot of things are state sponsored, right? So, for example, judo was widely available. Every city has at least one judo academy, and it was state sponsored. I didn't have to pay for it. You just show up and you start training. And so around 9 years oldish when I started judo, and then judo was, by 11 I was competing. Judo became sort of I would say like a very influential part of my life in a way that I immediately understood that it's not just brawling. It's not like I'm learning techniques. It's also philosophy. So it shaped the way I was thinking about everything. And it puts a different goggle on you. When you start, learning martial arts, it's, also helps when your sensei is a spiritual guy, So you're guided not by just technique, but why you're doing it and how it changes you as a person, because martial arts rewires your mind. You start to think completely differently. Everything is different now. You become a different person, and that was sort of the basis for my life. I believe that, that it also, one of the main reasons I became successful later in life, because I based everything on martial arts philosophy, and I operate in a world by those, concepts, by those rules. It's sort of life is a chess game, and when you become a martial artist, right? First, and I always say this to people, even though the question was where I came from, it's a perfect, insert here.
Yeah.
So I was 9 years old training martial arts, but even by that age, it was really shaping me where I was going. And I understood very early that how, as I said, it changes me and it changes how you feel and how you become. And I start to understand and start to soak all this in a way that I know it's changing me and I welcome that change. I want that change, First you go to your first competition, right? It's all butterflies. It's all adrenaline. It's all like, oh my God, it's like, it feels like it's a high stake, dangerous environment. This is your first combat, right? And I always say to this day to people, go compete with this, because it's not about winning. Eventually you start figuring out this, because, out of 1,000 people, one will win, right? So what does that mean? The other 999 will be upset, so that's not what this is about. It's about you going there and put yourself in a high risk sort of, adrenaline fueled, scary scenario, right? And you keep doing that. And then it starts changing you. And then now suddenly you start to become comfortable in that environment, right? That adrenaline start dropping, then the nervousness stopping, and now suddenly it becomes a casual thing. You just show up. All right, let's do this, right? what that means, you actually become comfortable in a high risk sort of combat scenario. You became a warrior. You're a different person now. And then you walk and talk differently, and even on an early age, I kind of understood that, and so I based everything on martial arts. And then all of a sudden, every challenge, when I look at an obstacle, to me, it's a challenge. In fact, if you tell me like, oh, this is impossible, that's when I get excited. Oh, really? Let me, you know what I mean? That's when I pull on my sleeves, right? And look, for example, becoming a musician on an international level from my country, I think I'm maybe only the one person that actually broke out on this level, And even that was like, everybody's around me was telling me like, oh, this is not possible. We are in Hungary. There's a minefield around the country. There's a border patrol with a trigger happy, border patrol basically. You can't leave, because socialism and communism was so good that they didn't want you to leave the utopia, right? So why would you, so they wanted to stop you from being crazy, right? And so you can't leave, right? And you don't have a passport. We can't go to the West. So for you to go to America, as you're saying, and become a rock musician, it's impossible. And for me, it was like, watch me go, That came from martial art. That came from that, upbringing. And also the fact that I picked, as I said, it was available. Second, judo, maybe wrestling and jiu-jitsu have a common element. It is really full contact, So this is not a simulated scenario where, we're punching toward each other, but not really punching. That, that's not really, and you're not really learning what happens, when, two people go at it, right? And I think that was also a part of it, that it was important to me that this is real. This is body against body, power against power, technique against technique, and that was important. So that was my basis, and that's kind of how this sort of permeated my entire life. Everything I do, as I said, based on this, and I stayed in Hungary until I finished my college, And so when I was around 21, 22 is when the whole system was caving in, and and we have passports, and I came to America, and I'm like, all right, I don't speak English. I have a bag of clothes and a guitar and $200. Let's go.
Wow. That's incredible.
And here I am.
That's incredible, man. There's nothing more that I love than like a good immigrant story like that, man, where you show up with little and then end up with everything, man. That really is incredible.
Man, and I tell you what, it's like to insert that in here. Sorry to interrupt. The Statue of Liberty, man, it meant something to me. When I saw that, when I was landing in New York City, I was like, oh man, I'm here now. It's for an immigrant, it matters. For an immigrant coming to America and understanding what this country was based on, and the attempt that it, what they were trying to do, and it's still work in progress, but but that especially from a massively oppressed, population like social and communism was, it definitely, I felt, I'm really in the place where anything is possible. So that and my whole martial arts mindset combined is pretty much was what was a rocket fuel for me. Like, oh, I can do whatever I want, and I already have this sort of pitbull mindset of like, let's go get it. That was the combo.
That's incredible, man. Well, there's two things about your origin story there that really stick out to me. One is it's yet another incredible testament of the benefits of putting kids in martial arts. A lot of us that start martial arts later in life, we're having to kind of readjust ourselves in a lot of ways, kind of recenter ourselves, because when you grow up without significant amounts of discipline or work ethic and things like that, you have to learn it later, and that can be kind of a painful learning curve. Whereas if you start young and you learn how to be disciplined and learn how to be on a path that's a positive path, you get to enter life a little earlier, being a little more centered along the way. And that sounds like it had tremendous benefits for you, both with your success in music and also just as a person. So that's awesome. Secondly, I really am, I'm always interested in hearing about people that come from backgrounds where they came from a communist country. I've interviewed like Hector Lombard on the show before years ago, who came from Cuba. A few different guests have been from Russia and things like that grew up in the USSR. I'm always fascinated to hear about how there were government programs for sports. And for Hector Lombard, for example, he was taken from his family and forced into the judo program. And that was kind of it led him to be a UFC fighter and everything, but it was obviously traumatic as a kid. Tell us about the program. Like when you were there, like what kind of benefits did you guys have being in basically a government-backed program for judo? What did you like about it? What did you dislike about it?
So you have to look at this, and what you were saying right now, it's actually true. This is kind of how this went down. And to understand the whole thing, you kind of have to understand the mentality, like why and how this happened, right? So, and there are good things and there are really, really bad things about it, And so the whole idea was that, to achieve this utopia that they're attempting, there's this idea that you should be doing, which is, as I said, some of these are, I would say, correct. And in fact, I would say communism might happen in the future, but not by not Marxist communism as the attempted communist systems were. But, and again, I'm not friendly toward communism, but I still think that it's a possibility, because you see communism as a class war, basically, eradicating the classes, right? And mainly giving power to the worker class and homogenizing the population, that there is nothing but worker class, right? Okay, with AI and automatization, there is a possibility in a not so distant future when the worker class is not necessary anymore, right? So if that happens, then obviously people won't have jobs because they are unnecessary for them to work. If these are robots and and machines are making your food and basically building everything, then there is no worker class, right? And so there has to be a universal basic income, or there has to be a complete restructure of society, because what you're going to do without a job, right? Economy will come to a screeching halt. So there is a possible future that we're talking about the danger of AI. There are benefits and dangers, and there are changes, and this would be one of the changes that can be a serious change that I'm not even sure that they are contemplating yet of what this is gonna create. But in that way, like if you fast forward in the future, like in Star Trek, right? That would be a socialist communist society. You're not going to go to the bar on a ISS. What is it? The spaceship. And okay, well, that drink gonna be $2.50 in space coins, right? Yeah. So anyway, so that's a possible future, right? But anyway, so what they were trying to do, this from the Marxist mindset, and there was this element that you should be doing what you're good at, right? So they literally came to us. So the story that you just recounted is true. They would coming to us when we were in kindergarten, And by the way, I walked myself to the kindergarten when I was 4 years old, in snow that was taller than me. We don't have like parents. Oh, no. Parents are not dropping you off. Kid, school is that way. 4 miles. It's cold. Put on your coat. I show you one time how to go there, and then you go. Wow. And I'm not kidding. That was completely normal. I'd never been picked up from school or kindergarten. I walked myself. Wow. 4 years old. That's completely normal.
That's amazing.
And so and so they come to the kindergarten, right? And then they put you to various tests, right? And then they kind of separate the kids, like, okay, you are really good at math and physics, and you're really good at, you're athletic, you're good at art, you're good at certain things. And then they started splitting you at that level, elementary school level, that they already putting you in schools that are specialized in that. So, for example, at the time I was a real tiny kid, actually. I was really small when I was a kid. And so I wasn't picked for the athleticism, so to speak. And but I went to a school that I had 3 math class every day. So I was good at math. So they were putting us through classes about geometry and pattern recognition and things like that, right? And I was excelling in that. So they put me in a school. So I was specialized in mathematics and physics, and so I was going to be a scientist. That was my life. Wow. Kind of, sort of paved for me And so for my youth, I was going to math competitions, physics competitions. I was working for an observatorium, So all the people around me were scientists and professors from, various higher, level education, like college professors, even though I was still in elementary school, and we were just, that stuff was pounded into us, and I literally thought I'm going to be a particle scientist,
Wow.
But and so it is true. And some people went to school that they had physical education, or they had wrestling in school and stuff like that, because they were picked for that. So that was a real thing. They were separating us into different life paths, and the idea that you should be doing what you're good at, was the idea. And there's so the part where it's state sponsored and let's try to do what you're good at is not a bad idea, right? The things that go sideways is where where this equality or equal opportunity becomes equal outcome. Because basically how the communists originally operated, the wealth and the land was already distributed. So for you to redistribute and start a new society, you have to take that back, right? And start over. So it's kind of like, on a rudimentary example, I would make like you take everybody's money, put it in a pile, and then redistribute it so everybody has the same amount, right?
Yeah.
And if you're going to do that, which kind of what they did originally, if you do that, you're going to find out really quickly that people who used to have will have again, and the people who don't, they don't. It's a mind state, how you operate in the world, right? It's the same idea that, I give somebody a chisel or a hammer, and then they're just gonna, everything is a nail. You give that, to a sculptor, and now there's a beautiful sculpture. So we're not using tools the same way. We're not using knowledge and opportunities the same way. You can't equalize people from that perspective. So yeah, we had these opportunities, and school was free, but it also came with, this slow baggage that if school is free, everybody can go to any school you want to, then, and you don't have to pay for it, then everybody wants to go to school, because now if you can go to college for free and you don't have a college education, there comes the question like, why not? Are you lazy? What's going on, right?
Sure.
So now everybody wants that, right? Because it's, because now it becomes a question mark, like, why don't you have it? And but there's not enough educators and not enough seats in these, in these colleges or even high schools or universities. So some way they have to they have to separate who gets in and who doesn't.
Yeah.
So now it's like if you don't have it, in my country, high school was a privilege. If you didn't, in elementary school, if you didn't have a 4.0 grade, you can't even apply to high school. That means you will not have an education. You're going to sweep streets for the rest of your life.
Wow.
Because there is no private sector. You can start your own cookie factory, or you can't drop out of whatever school and start your factory. You can't own anything. The state owns everything, right?
Yeah.
So there is no alternative path. So in school, a 10-year-old kid is deathly aware of this idea that if you screw up now, dude, your life is screwed. For the rest of your life, you're done, right? So the school system was creating pit bulls. Like, I knew that if I don't get 4.0, I can't even apply, right? And then if you get 4.0, then you apply. And there's a rigorous test. And they literally that look at like, okay, the first, we have 500 seats. So the first 500 best scores gets in. The rest, sorry. You can have a secondary choice, a school that is probably, you pick a lesser school. So whatever score you got maybe get you in that school. But then you bumped out a kid from that school who now won't have a high school education. Wow. So it was hard. It's hardcore, man.
That's pretty brutal.
So you grow up. You grow up by 10 years old, you're an adult. Like, oh my God, if I screw this up, I'm done, right? So anyway, so that's the schooling system. So now, but you do have the opportunity, right? Now, what happened? You redistributed the wealth, right? Everybody kind of, started a new life, and then people who had again, people who don't have again, or don't have again. So they realized, like, okay, as I just said, everybody uses tools, education, whatever you have differently. So, excuse my language, but you can't make the dumbasses smart.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
So you can bring them up. Whatever, it doesn't matter how much you educate them. It's just not happening.
Yeah.
So to not create the gap in wealth or, in society, you have to hold down the ones who excel. So they figured out, so, okay, this is not that. So again, equal opportunity. We give the equal opportunity, but we also have to cap the top, because the people who are good at, using tools, or using tools as in, would it be actual tools or education? People who are good at, at life, I guess, or, people who are smarter, people who are inventive, or people who just work really hard, they will pull away from the crowd.
Sure.
So you have to stop. So they're going to create this gap again. So you have to stop them. How do you stop them? Well, if the state owns everything, you get paid from the state, and there's a limit on how much you can get paid. So all of a sudden, it creates this situation where, like the garbage man with almost no education and a doctor, their pay grade is not so different. And all of a sudden, you start thinking like, then what's the point?
Wow.
Why am I, why am I sitting here? Why am I educating myself? Where, a 14 years old kid starts working now and start to make some money. And for you to be a doctor, by the time you hit your PhD, you're 25, 26, maybe 37. And so this kid has 10 plus years of working over you. Right.
Wow.
So it's kind of, it scrambles society, and what's important, what's not important. Also, you have to have a job. So companies would give you a job, even if they didn't need you. So it ended up with everybody just sitting around, because I have, 10 people with the same qualifications sitting in the same office. There's one machine broken. It takes one person to fix it, right? The other 9 will do nothing. But then all of a sudden, everybody's like, no, you fix it. I don't care. Why would I? From the 10 of us that are overqualified, and we don't, and there are too many people here anyway, right? Because you have to have a job. So the companies had to give you a job. So this was this fictitious society of, based on rules that just don't accord to human nature, and if there was no reason to develop and struggle, there would be no evolution. The fact that there is an evolution, that means that there is a fight here for survival. There's a fight here for adaptation to whatever system comes, right? That's the reason there's evolution. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist, right? That's incredible. And so this takes, right? And it takes evolution out of the system. And then, you gave me the opportunity. So now back to martial arts. Yeah, I can go to, I can go to judo, and I can go to wrestling, and I can go to school for free. But then, but at least in sports, they didn't give you participation medal. So, so you actually it's real. That's why I also meant by martial arts kind of trained me to be real, trained me for real life, the real scenario. And I think my head was screwed on right because of that. But, but this whole idea that you can equalize people by limiting the outcome is absolutely insane. It will collapse. It has collapsed societies and economies. All these communist countries failed because of this reason, and as I said, the Marxist communism not going to work. It was tried so many times, and it is violent, because people who already have will not give it up. I can break the idea in very simplistic ways, like, right? It's like, if everybody equal, everybody has to have the same size house, let's say, right? Because why do you have a big one and I have a small one, right? Okay, well, there are already houses built, so we would have to go along with the insanity to destroy all of them and rebuild, right? So let's destroy every big house and rebuild the same kind of houses. So very cool. All right, I want mine on the seashore. I want mine on the top of the hill.
Yeah.
See, so geographically you can't equalize us, right? I mean, there's just a dumb idea, right? Now, as I said, through automation and through technological advancement, there might be a future when there is no reason for a worker class. There might be a reason that this utopistic paradise could exist where everybody just does whatever they want. I'm not sure that, the world needs like 20 million surf instructors, or whatever it is that everybody wants to do. What I mean? But okay, what I mean. But the way that this was set up, the way it worked, obviously it's failed for that reason. It's both economically and from the perspective of society, it just won't stand. It just doesn't make sense. And it's not, I can shit a PhD about this. I was educated by communist professors, you know what I mean? And it was pounding in us daily. So, we could drill down to the nitty gritty of this, but I would say that everybody who came out of that system, 100% appreciate at least the possibility that my efforts will be rewarded, because that is natural. An animal goes out hunting, grabs and gets and fights and gets the reward. It's nature. You know what I mean? And you can't take that away from people. That's they just go crazy. It's just what it is.
Well, Matt, Zoltan, I really appreciate this perspective, man. I'm like I said, I'm always so fascinated in hearing people's backgrounds. Especially, it's also nice to hear people that, depending on what region of the world they grew up in, their upbringing can be completely different than our perspective in the U.S. or for wherever you live. So I really do appreciate you elaborating all this. And something interesting that you said there that really fascinates me too. I'd love to hear the story behind this. Is you were on a trajectory to be a particle scientist. It seems like that was, and then man, you took. I mean, talk about a detour, man. You became a rock star. How in the world did that happen? I mean, you talk about a detour of all detours, man.
There were a couple of different detours. I mean, that was definitely. And look, I still to this day. I mean, I read. I can't tell you how many books in my life. I would say my life was pretty complex in some way. Even that has a really weird twist that. I was going to become a particle scientist, and I was actually really, really interested in that. And this is a subject that I still study to this day, but from a different angle now. Quantum physics and the whole idea, is really fascinating for me. But there was definitely a couple of things that fractured this trajectory for me. One of them was that I understood fairly early. The futility and the futility of some of these subjects and the limitation of the mind, right? So the mind is intelligent enough to realize the end of its own capacity, right? The end of its own ability. And, as I said, I was still very young, probably 13, 14, when I started to give up on this. By the time I was doing judo and I was, even playing guitar and, I was interested in a lot of other things. But as for the science part, I started to realize that, things like the concept of infinity, theoretically, you can understand this. Theoretically and intellectually, you can kind of understand it, but truly you can never feel it and really understand it. So you can understand the concept, but not infinity itself. Right, we have no explanation, and unfortunately, you come to a conclusion that we cannot have an explanation because a human mind, especially linearly thinking human mind, cannot decouple itself from the idea of time, cannot decouple itself from the idea of three-dimensional space. So you can perceive two-dimensional space because you're looking at it from the third dimension, right? So you can see what's on a paper, but you can't see the 3D from the outside. You don't have that ability. Yeah. And so to make it actually a simpler example, like there's a mathematical theoretical infinity. You give me a number and I can always add one, right? Sure. Forever, right? There's a way some studies explain infinity that every number can be divided by 2. Right. So, so the distance between me and this screen is, let's say, of 2 feet and then 1.5. And, and this number getting really, really small, but it can be infinitely small. Right. And it will never stop. Well, if that was the case, and I could have been nicer, the way I put it to my math professor at the time could have been nicer. But, when we got into this argument about this, I said like, hey, look, your face is about 2 feet from my fist. And and by your theory, I can never punch you in the mouth. And if I did that, do I still have to go to the principal, or can I go to the principal and say like, I didn't hit him. It's mathematically impossible. Right? The infinity, theory of infinity says that I could not possibly hit him in the face. So it wasn't me, man. I don't know what happened.
That's amazing.
And I was thrown out of class for that one. But but that's kind of the idea, of now, some of these things are just not, the theories are not sound. Physics are just a collection of ideas that we have currently, most likely will be overturned. We are not even scratching the surface. And, and we are not counting with perception, right? So when you're making theories, you're not calculating that perception is involved, right? And so your numbers will be automatically off. Your theory will be off because perception is part of the equation here, Now, for me, it came from a very bizarre direction. I had an out-of-body near-death experience when I was about 12, 13. Yeah, I was on my bike paddling behind some truck, trying to enjoy the wind channel, sort of, that I can go faster, right? The lack of wind, and this truck stopped while I was looking down. Whatever, my chain was rattling. I was really going really fast, and the truck stopped, and I hit it, And I heard an explosion, and I very clearly remember that I was looking around for quite a while. I was coherently thinking and looking for the source of the explosion. What happened? What was this big bang, right? So, and I noticed during this search for the source of the explosion that I could move unnaturally. Like I just looked behind a bush. I'm like, that bush was like 25 foot away from me. What the hell is happening? So I started to have I had a full-on out-of-body experience when I was literally just, I could go wherever I wanted to go, basically, for the lack of better, explanation. And then next thing I know, it just stopped, and I'm sitting under a truck in a pool of blood. I had gushing blood, and the people are standing around me. And, I just grabbed my bicycle and I just got the hell out of there, Dude, But that was normal. You go home, dude, in those countries, you can come home with a knife sticking out your back and your mom will say, just walk it off, kid, go to the hospital. It's 3 miles that way. I mean, we didn't have the, come here. I don't remember I was ever hugged by my parents. That's not how this works, man. Wow. It's like, dude, kid, you go to school, you fight. If you get your ass beat, I'll beat your ass too. Right. Literally. No, I'm not. I wish I was kidding. No. That was what my dad said to me. You go and, you fight. And so anyways, I go home, I'm covered with blood. And, my mom, Jesus Christ, kid, just don't get the carpet bloody, That's it. Oh my God. That's it. Right?
Hardcore.
Oh yeah. Well, dude, we didn't even have hot water in the apartment. It's not like I can take a hot shower. It's ice cold. On the winter, it's freaking ice cold. Wow. So I was ice plunging before anybody was ice plunging, man, because that's what it was available, wow. So anyway, so I didn't say anything to anybody because I'm like, this is beyond, and again, I had a scientific mind. So I wasn't a kid who was just like, oh my God, what, I was very analytical. I'm like, what the hell just happened? See, and I went to the library and start looking, and I start finding books. There are not many books were translated to Hungarian, but I found these books, Life After Death, and interviews with people who passed, and I start to read those. And, the early age Google, right? Every, sentence sometimes have a little asterisk, and it tells you what book the excerpt is coming from. And then I would highlight that, and I get that book too.
Wow.
So I would digging down the rabbit hole. And within a year, I found myself reading books about yoga, enlightenment, Tibetan Buddhism, and Hinduism. And then I started to drill down on that path. So that's kind of how, for me, all of a sudden science and reality sort of split. When I started to realize that, okay, this is real, and the science is just something trying to explain what this is with very simple primitive ways and primitive words. Even right now, a lot of scientists are out there and they think they've solved it. And, you have to have the intelligence that, a couple of 100 years ago, in the 1300s, if I said that, the earth wasn't the center of the universe, I would have been crucified, right? So, how sound is science? How many people, the Copernicus, the Galileos of the world were, confined to their apartment because they disagreed with the worldview, or Semmelweis, or people like that, the Mongol-filled brothers who break the idea nothing heavier than air can fight or fly, right? Yeah. Well, a Boeing 747 taking a big dump on that idea every single day, right? Right. You know what I mean? So many these physics is these theories of science. It's not science. It's a collection of opinions, you know, and it does just what it is, opinions. What now? The thing that you can't take away from this experience, when I experience something, you know, and it's real, right? And or at least I perceive it to be real. I will trust my perception and my whatever I perceive it to be real anytime before I trust what was explained to me. You know, if this is my perception, well, this is my perception. And, you know, and also comes down to the argument of our perception. You can't, you know, we have agreed upon realities that we agree like, okay, we're going to call this frequency blue. The light behind you is blue. We both agree to that. So I don't know what you see. We just agreed on that particular frequency that we're going to call it blue. But I actually don't know what you see, and you don't know what I see, right?
Wow.
So the only thing that's absolutely true is that I am here, I am perceiving something is going on, right? Beyond that, this is how I win every argument. I know for a fact, right? One thing, you know, there's this old saying that give me one solid point, you know, in a universe and I can move it. Well, I have one solid point. My solid point is that I know that nobody knows jack shit. Nobody. There's not a person alive on this planet that has a fucking idea what's happening. Not one, right? And I know that. Now, what I know is that I don't know either, but because I know that nobody has a freaking clue, right? I can pretty much win every argument because at the end of the day, I know that you don't have a friggin' idea what's happening.
That's amazing.
Right? But, you know, but we still agreed on the frequency that coming off of your belt, you know, I don't know what you see, but we both call it blue, right? That's kind of what I'm saying. Yeah. So, you know, so that's sort of, you know, that's sort of what took me away from science, you know, like I drilled down on that pad and I start to read, especially when I came to America, I learned to speak English by, that's a funny story. I had a Hungarian English dictionary and I translated a book, Shawshank Redemption, word by word without a clue of, I read it fucking 50 times because I had to always restart it because I started to understand. I'm like, it's a pretty good book, right?
Wow.
And so, because somebody left it in a place I was staying in New York City, I couldn't afford to buy books. And, you know, but after that, I learned to speak English. I was reading the book, translating word by word, and watching TV. I had a little black and white TV with closed captions so I can recognize the word, how it's written, and how they pronounce it.
Wow.
That's how I learned to speak English.
That's incredible.
And once I spoke English, dude, I was in Barnes and Nobles and in Borders and the bookstores every day. I would read probably three books a week, you know, because they don't throw me out. I couldn't afford to buy books, but I would sit there and read books. And so I just continued the drill down. I mean, I read everything from, you name it, Mesoamerican, you know, philosophy, Carlos Castaneda and his entire work probably 3-4 times, you know, anything Eastern philosophy from, you name it, Miyamoto Musashi, your Book of Five Rings, you know, the samurai stories to, you know, Sun Tzu, Art of War, to from the autobiography to the yogi to the key of self-realization to, you know, pretty much I even have books that were badly written in English, printed in Tibet in some hand press. You know what I mean? Like I was just going after it, and I was also sort of traveling. Especially later in life, when I could afford it. Finally, I would travel and I seek out yogis and people that I would heard of that they do things that are not scientifically explainable. You know, I was looking for the miracles. I was sitting with various yogis. I have experiences that there's no way to explain. You know, I had encounters that I can't really put in words. You know what I mean? And again, I came from science. I'm not a guy that just can, you know, swayed by some smoke and mirrors, you know what I mean? And so that life path took me more into the spiritual path versus the scientific path. And again, you know, at one point the two will meet, you know, it's the spiritual part of existence is there. It exists right now, right? It's just scientifically, we can't explain it. That's basically what's happened, you know? So reality is reality. We just don't have a scientific explanation. And when it comes to our perception, and I don't know if you ever went to, you know, maybe if you go to Peru or various places to have an ayahuasca ritual or similar, if you start to drill down that path, and it also parallels why so many shamans and men of knowledge sort of using, various psychedelics to jolt you out of that understanding or what you accept as reality. There's a reason for these medicinal plants, right? Plants and reality can be scrambled pretty quickly. It can be done by, some herbal supplementation, so to speak, or it can be through meditation. It takes a long time, but, that's a practice. I have been doing it for decades, and you can, through breathing and you expert various techniques, you can get to, self-realization and various levels of, spiritual practices,
Wow.
I would recommend to find somebody that impresses you. I search forever for finding a guru or a teacher that I can say, okay, this person is doing or saying something that is impressing me or I feel to be true, right? And I recommend that people surround themselves with spiritual adept people, because that is the ultimate reality, that we exist in some way, and we came without a book, a user manual. You have no idea what the hell is going on, right? We're just living in this world and have no friggin' idea what is happening,
That's incredible, man.
And I think it's ultimately, that's what you have to understand. Ultimately, you have a short period of time here, and the most important question: what is happening? Where did we come from? And what happens when we die? These are the most important questions. Everything else in between is, have fun.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
There's
There's so many paths in life you can take too. I mean, there's so many different ways to go through this experience of life. And, your story, for example, is a perfect example. Like, you went down the path of being a musician, and you're also a martial artist. And that's two completely different paths that both have great, enrichment in both ways. Speaking of which, how did you find jiu-jitsu? How did you initially, did you find jiu-jitsu obviously once you got to the US, or did you know about it already in Hungary?
So jiu-jitsu was not available to us, So I was a judoka pretty much my whole life, and so when I came to America, obviously the first few years, I left at a block a good few years because it was about survival. I came to America and I had to learn this language. I have to assimilate into society. I have to figure out life and how to live here, and the whole system. It was very different, obviously. And so I left out a few years, but once I was sort of stabilized and on my feet, I started to, back, Kung Fu is available and Kali, and what I mean? Like, I don't want to really get my finger hit. So that, that went away pretty quickly. But, you know what I mean? But there was all kind of martial arts now. Like, let's dive in.
Wow.
And, I was aware of jiu-jitsu. I was aware of the Gracies and the Gracie Challenge. I was aware of what was coming out of Brazil. I'm obviously a judoka, so I'm aware of the history of martial arts, history of jiu-jitsu itself, and how judo and jiu-jitsu was basically, it was just jiu-jitsu. It's split in and what's the history of that. So I was very aware of this. I was going out on a tour somewhere in 2007, and some of the other bands had a couple of guys in there, Herman Lee from Dragon Force and a couple of other guys who were training jiu-jitsu. And I'm like, okay, I'm a judo guy. Let's bring some mats and let's roll. Let's, exchange some techniques and let's have fun. And so we did that. And while we were setting up our mat every single day, I had a friend that I didn't have an idea, actually, that he was a jiu-jitsu black belt. I had no idea. Never came up the conversation, because he was also a guitar player. So with these conversations never came up, right? But when he saw me rolling and, teaching judo and exchanging techniques, he was like, "Oh my God, I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt under Hoyler." I'm like, "Oh," and basically he sort of traveled with us here and there on the bus, and then he was saying like, "Hey, we're going to California, and Hoyler is out of town, but Hoist is there. I can hook up a personal, sort of a private lesson with Hoist Gracie." Wow. And I'm like, "Oh my God," right? And so So I go to neutral grounds. This is Evaldo's Lima's academy, right? He's a sweet guy. I love Evaldo, right? Great competitor too, right? And so it's his academy, neutral ground in California. And I'm going there with a couple of friends, and I realize like there are other guys I know, like small world, right? And so there are a couple of black belts, Evaldo, Ivan Kravitz, you know what I mean? A couple of guys there that I came with, and we're waiting for Hoist. And all of a sudden, the door flies open, walks, you know, then there comes Hoist, mad as a horn. Like, I mean, he looked angry. And I'm supposed to have a private with him, right? So he kicks in the door, he just slams his bag, and, you know, it's like, fucking hell. It's like, man, I'm going to murder somebody today. And I'm looking at my friends like, hey, guys, you know, I have a show later, and if my hands are broken and shoved up my ass, I can't really play guitar. So this is a bad idea, you know. And he's pacing up and down, and it's clearly mad. And all these guys, like these are all his black belts, right? They all these guys, yeah, you know what? I'm my knees a little bit, you know, out, and I have to go and pick up the kids. Right. You know, everybody's kind of start evaporating. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah. Like, yeah, I can't train today, man. I really hurt my hip. So everybody has an excuse, you know. And it looks at me, you get on a mat. I'm like, holy shit, you know. And I'm like, guys, you know, I'm doing this sign, like, you know, like Team America, right? You know, the sign of panic. What is the sign? I'm doing that, right? So yeah, I'm full blown like panic, right? Guys, this is, you know, and so we go as like, and they standing out there, you know, everybody's watching. Right, pretending to be hurt, and me and Hoist goes a mat, right, and combat stand, right, bump fist, and I'm like, here it goes. I didn't do my wheel yet. I didn't say goodbye to my friends. I'm like, this is, I'm like, shit. This is, I have to rethink my, you know, life here. And he bumped fist, and he looks mad. And he bumped fist, and I'm like, oh, here he goes. And he started laughing, rolling around laughing. I mean, and then everybody was laughing. They totally set me up. So he was just kidding.
Oh, that's awesome.
But he sold it. I thought, I was like, fucking hell, this is it. You know what I mean?
Oh,
I mean, this is it. This is how I go out, right? And so then, you know, we trained, and then I felt the power of jiu-jitsu, you know? And here I am, a judo black belt, helpless. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, oh my God, and, you know, we do Nevada, but, you know, but I mean, especially modern judo, and more now judo is developing. I mean, there's a reason why it's concentrating on throws and stand up, right? They want to make, you know, the Olympic Committee want to make sure that it's very different from, let's say, wrestling and any other martial arts, right? So, you know, yeah, we go down and we train there, but not that much, right? I throw, and then, okay, mat head, that's up. It's an opponent, it's over, right? So I have some Nevada, but man, I mean, like I was out of my element completely. And so get a proper ass whooping, you know, there are pictures of it. And at one point he blindfolded me, you know, so I can just feel where I'm going, right? I don't know if it helped or not, but I was just getting my ass whooped. So after the training, I pretty much, you know, I was telling Hoist, like, I'll hand you my black belt, give me a white belt, I start jiu-jitsu. So, you know, so after that, I started to travel I became good friends with Hoyler as well. And I started to travel with them. So when Hoist would go to do a seminar, I would go. When I had time, I would travel with them, either Hoist, Hoyler, right? And I would partake in their seminars. So that was my original, you know, sort of introduction.
That's amazing.
Taking the seminars. And, you know, it was cool because, you know, we were friends, and, you know, we were traveling, and, you know, it was fun. And then I moved to Las Vegas, you know, because I was on the road, and I lived in California. I was on the road anyway. So I'm like, why am I paying California taxes and prices when I'm not even here? You know, 200 days at least out of the year I'm not here. So I moved to Vegas. And then in Vegas, I joined Team Mika, which was world, you know, like national champion team for years and years in a row. And Mika is, you know, Mika Sipili is like the second most decorated jiu-jitsu fighter of all time. So like the most, you know, podium he got. I think it's Megaton is number one. Yeah. You know, so, you know, he's a 5th degree black belt, you know, and He's a serious competitor. His team is like absolute savages, right?
Wow.
And so I joined that team. That became my home, and it is actually a Gracie who made the academy now. So it's Team Mika Gracie who made it. So it's still under Hoyler. When I got my black belt, I got it from Mika and Hoyler together, because I started Hoyler. So it was just, and he's, an affiliate. So this just made sense. And so I started there, and then when I'm going on the road, then I take my mats with me, and my security guys are black belt, Jiu-Jitsu black belts for the last 12, 13 years. So I can train on the road as well. So that's sort of how I got into Jiu-Jitsu, and then I started to compete immediately when I was white belt. I'm telling you, I always tell to everybody, it's compete because you have to. It's not about winning. You have to watch yourself, what happens to your body when you go compete, and watch the physiological changes, your heartbeat, and what really happens. Don't worry about the win or the lose. Just be there. Soak up that energy. This is how you become a warrior. Yeah. Because sooner or later, you will be comfortable. You're just going to walk in like routine, like it's casual. That day, when that happens, is when you became that person who are comfortable under pressure and in the crazy situations, adversities. That's one of the main reasons to become a martial artist,
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, so I started compete when I was white belt, and then since that, whenever I have time, then I go compete, and
that's incredible.
And it's my it's definitely a massive part of my life. I mean, I have no illusions, I'm not, I'm past that. And I'm gonna be a UFC fighter, and that time is I passed that time now. But but it's something that I'm never gonna stop. I sometimes say, it just keeps you in that mind state. And I think it's important that you have this warrior mind state, this martial artist mind state, and because shit happens in life, right? Well, let's parallel this with jiu-jitsu, right? When you're on a mat and number one, you're here, you're going to have to go against somebody, right? And this is full contact. So this is not going to be like, pretending that we're punching. No, this is full contact jiu-jitsu. And so this is real. So there is some risk, obviously, especially if you don't know when to tap and you're too proud of yourself, then definitely risk, right? So, so you have to, a lot of things happen. You have to leave the ego outside the door, because if you don't, you're going to get hurt. When it's time to tap, you got to admit, you've been caught.
Yeah.
Tap, right? So there is something you learn there, some humility you learn, right? Then they also learn how difficult it is. You can maybe run an hour, get on a mat for 5 minutes, and you realize it's a whole different animal. It's a whole different cardio. I can run an hour without thinking about it,
Yeah.
On the mats, it's a whole different story, right? So then you start to realize physically what's happening. Then the idea is that it's inevitable. You and the other guy gonna go now. You're gonna fight, right? You can't shove it under the mat. You can't, let's put it like maybe tomorrow. No. This is inevitable. So you learn to deal with the inevitable when it happens right now. Parallel that to life. Shit happens. You can't I'll be dealing with it tomorrow. No. Let's deal with it right now. So you start to learn these life skills through jiu-jitsu. And then you start rolling. And what's happening here? Even if it's you're a white belt, blue belt, and rolling against a black belt, you're trying. See what I mean? Your chances are pretty small, but you're trying. That is an important skill. That's what makes people successful. You're looking at this mountain to climb, and you go, "Oh my God, little kid from Hungary didn't speak English, come to America with $200. How are you gonna be anything, right?" So it's an impossible mountain to climb, but you can't have that thought. You have to try. So you, as even a lower belt running against some massively skilled person, you're still trying. You're not giving up. So this gives you this skill of you're gonna go. You're gonna try.
Yeah.
You're gonna deal with this right now. You're not gonna give up. And let's say you get caught with something. Now, two things. It's one is again, the humility when you know like, okay, it's absolutely, I'm done. I have to give up here. And when you have to tap, you learn humility, right? You also learn when a situation is, let's say you run a business. There's sometimes in life when it's, okay, this business is just not working. And sometimes you're going down the wrong path and you have to abandon it. Yeah. You know, you're pounding the same thing and it doesn't work. It's like in Jiu-Jitsu, I got caught. It's over. It's at the end of the road. I know when to have to tap out, right? Or when it is like, you know what, there is still a chance. I'm going to keep fighting. See what I mean? That's also a skill to understand. So now I'm going to keep fighting. And what happens? Here, it happens that I'm against really, really bad odds and I'm still fighting against. That's a life skill that you need to have, you know? And you have to start to accumulate these little bits and, you know, bits of knowledge and philosophy, right? That will parallel to your life. And, you know, and so every battle is winnable. My job, your job, our job is to figure out what way. There is always a way. Like, can 300 Spartans beat a million Persians? Yeah, funnel them into into canyon. So you have to, you know what I mean? So there's always a way. That's why there is strategy. So now you learn strategy. Now, every single time when there's an obstacle, as a martial artist, you don't see it as an obstacle. You see it as a challenge that I have to somehow solve, right? Again, parallel to your life. Without this skill, you're never going to be successful. You have to look at obstacles as challenges, you know?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then when you get the masterful levels, then you go, okay, I am now looking at a really bad situation, right? An unfortunate situation. Number one, it's another good skill. Do not accept the position. We always say this in Jiu-Jitsu, right? Yeah. Don't accept the position, because an unfortunate position, a weak position, is where your trouble starts. So is in life. You accepted a job you don't really like, but you kind of, it's not bad. Okay, you're just wasting your life. You accept a relationship that's kind of okay, but just like, okay, well, you're wasting your time again, right? So you kind of have to, look at that. Like, don't accept the situation. But if you were forced into a situation by a highly skilled, person, then now you have to deal with that, right? And that is the skill that I have to figure this out. I can't give up. I have to figure this out, how to get out of this. And if you're masterful, then you start to change this in your mind. It's not just I'm going to figure out how to get out of this, but I'm actually going to figure out how to use this as an advantage. Now, it's a whole different story. This is when, in real life, if I wanted to parallel it to something, I would say when there's a crisis, right? There's a saying that don't ever let a crisis go unused, or something like that, right?
Don't let a good crisis
to waste.
Yeah,
that's the one, right? So it's kind of like that. Can I use a bad situation in life and turn it around and find the angle that it is still good or even advantageous to me, right? So in martial arts, the same thing. That's when you start trapping people and you get into a bad situation, but you figure out a way, like, you know what, this looks bad, but I think I can wrist lock you from here. I know wrist lockers don't go to heaven, but I'm going to do it, right? So there are those situations when it looks like I'm getting choked or I'm getting submitted, but I'm like, but yeah, there's this little thing that, you can do right here. Yeah. Like, you can be in a rear naked choke, but the guy crossed his legs.
Yes. Yeah.
Oopsie. You know what I mean? Like, it better be high when you cross the legs. By the way, this weekend, I lost basically a fight because of that. Right. Really? So I was doing the LA International Open. And I was doing great, and I got the back, full, I'm looking for the choke, but the guy was, much bigger than me. And so I needed to hold him, right? So I crossed my leg. Now I'm conscious of having my leg high so he can't lock it, right? Yeah. But you don't get points for that. Yeah. I don't get the 4 points. So actually, and so I didn't get my points, and I ended up losing that fight, and basically a technicality of like, oh, Jesus Christ.
That's the worst. Right? That's the worst.
But yeah, it's all right. Again, you go there for a different reason. I love competitions, and I know most of the people there. You know what I mean? It's a big brotherhood worldwide. I just love being there anyway. But it was fun, and the guy was really, really, really good. It's probably one of the strongest guy I ever fought. I'm like, holy shit, man, he was diesel, man. And, so it was a good war. Even though I lost on fight, I did lose in my mind, because I'm like, man, this was war. This was real. This was, man, we were going at it. You know what I mean? And there was respect, and there was, and I had the positions, technicality. I didn't get the points, but that's okay. Right. But anyway, somebody crosses your leg. It looks like, oh man, I'm done. Rear naked choke, right? You can lock those legs. You can ankle lock somebody from there. So even from the worst position is maybe a way out. Now, parallel that to life, when absolute shit show is happening. If you read the books of extremely successful people, billionaires, and they're super successful people, almost all of them starts with, then I lost everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And from there, I had to whatever, right?
To build back.
Yeah. It's a common element. Like, I was born in a communist country, and I had to, you know what I mean? Or I was here and my family lost everything. Or, you know what I mean? A lot of these stories starts from there. Yes. Because fighting your way back from there gives you a skill and a trust. Like, okay, I was on the lowest level of life, right? Like, man, I was in New York City living from $5 a day. When I was there. So, in the beginning, I didn't speak English. So how worse it can get, right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess it can get $1 a day, but you know what I mean? Like, but you look at that, I've been on the bottom, right? And I was okay. I didn't die. I was okay. And actually I had a pretty good time. So, I was happy because I was in a country that I felt this is free and I can do anything here. And at least I don't have a cap. I can progress. So I was actually happy. So I mean, I'm looking at that, and or the person who was absolutely broken and lost everything. It's like, okay, I hit rock bottom. There's only up from here. And once as you're climbing, even though you maybe become a billionaire, right? You will never forget. Like, at one time I was broke, but I was okay. See, yeah. that is a life skill. You're not scared. You're not scared anymore. See what I mean?
Yeah. That. And Zoltan, I love that you're highlighting all this, because we talk a lot about how jiu-jitsu is just a great microcosm for life, and there's so many lessons that we learn within the art that are transferable to the world. And that's one of the things I always try whenever I'm trying to recruit friends of mine or family members to train jiu-jitsu. A lot of them think like, man, I'm not really like a fighter kind of guy, or I don't think I'm that athletic. They're not seeing like the bigger picture, right? And it's why it's why jiu-jitsu can have such a great impact on so many people. It's not just about athleticism and competition. It's just, man, it really does enhance your life. And actually, that kind of leads me to the topic I wanted to cover with you today, if you don't mind. I wanted to talk to you today about balancing training as just everyday people, because the vast majority of people who train jiu-jitsu are not full-time competitors. They're just normal people with jobs and families and things that they balance. And even though we all wish we could spend every waking moment on the mats, for most of us, it would, result in losing our jobs and becoming homeless. So you got to pay the bills, right? But I thought this would be a great topic to discuss with you, because I think it's awesome that despite the fact that you have all the commitments that come with being a rock star, from recording to rehearsing to media obligations and of course touring, you still find the time to not only train often, but compete. So let me start by asking this: with your schedule, how many times a week are you generally able to train?
Well, if I'm on the road, it's actually almost every day.
That's incredible.
It's like, so in the beginning, I used to, travel. That's how I kind of gained this worldwide brotherhood and network, where in the very beginning, I would bring my mats, but I would also go to local academies. Right. And then, I also, I start to have my security guys were jiu-jitsu black belts. So I picked them that way so we can train. So we would train at whatever venue we would play, we'd set it up and we'd train there. And then we would also go to local academies, and we always invite local, guys that are, practitioners and train with us. So this way I gained this worldwide family. And you know what? Actually, I want to make that a point, because I think it's also connects to this, that whoever becomes, even if you're a hobbyist, right? Even if you learn jiu-jitsu, and man, I'm recruiting. I cannot tell you how many people I got to start.
That's awesome.
That are now black belts. You know what I mean?
Cool.
That I started them, and I have a couple of proteges that I even pay for their memberships and whatnot.
Wow.
Because it helps. especially people who being bullied. I have a massive issue with that. But the idea is that you gain a family, like that you gain this brotherhood that I didn't experience in any other sports or other world, any other walk of life. How closely knit this is, right? And so whoever is a hobbyist understand that you will come to this place where this becomes your family in some way, right? Yeah. Like so many times somebody asked me this thing, it's funny, like, was it hard to, attain a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu? I'm like, well, let me think about it. So I had to go to the place where my friends hang out. And then we roll and laugh and learn to fight and learn techniques. And I guess not. You know what I mean?
It's a pleasure. It can be a pleasureful journey. Yeah.
Right. I mean, pun intended, twist my arm, right? But it's like, right. But the other side of that story is when people say, like, how many years it takes for an average person to become a black belt. It's like the average person never going to become a black belt. That's just, that's the other side of that.
I like
that coin, right?
Yeah.
But but just start. Because you will understand that, all the academies, we all know this. There are the competition guys and there are competition classes. Like I go to competition classes, I teach some competition classes, right? And that's only the people come that we are there to take each other's heads off. But only that day. And, like, so to speak, no civilians those days, because we know that this is competition class. If you are neurosurgeon, hobbies, do not jump on a mat with us, because right now we in murder mode, you know what I mean? This is simulated murder with, with self-restraint, but that's what this is. This is, and so for a hobbyist, it's all these benefits of, you will find yourself in a family that is very protective, right? And you're safe, and you develop these skills as physical skills. You develop a stamina that is going to be strange to you first, but it takes a lot of power and a lot of energy to do this. And you will not know that. You can be a marathon runner, not realizing, like, man, that's a whole different animal, right? So, but you gain that, right? And you also gain these life lessons, right? So it's completely okay. I mean, like, look, I train a lot. I still consider myself a hobbyist, because I'm not, this is not how I make my living. If you run a Jiu-Jitsu academy and you teach, then that's your job. That's your career. If you're a competitor, and then that's your competitor, a real competitor in adult divisions, right? And you have sponsorships, and this is all you do, then that's your life. Anybody else is a hobbyist. And there are the guys who used to compete, and now they still go to competitions, but they're in master divisions, and what I mean, they still go, they still do it, but that's not anymore. That look, Hoyle Gracie, one of the most one of the greatest of all time, right? If you talk to him today, he's like, I'm not world champion. I used to be, but I'm that time of my life passed. I am now a teacher, and I go around the world and teach and educate and teach both jiu-jitsu and the psychology that comes with it, but I don't say I'm world champion. I used to be, but you have to understand that, right? And so the people who, maybe even older, I also have friends who started in their 50s and now they're black belts, and you don't want to mess with them, you know what I mean? And they're old, So this imagination that you go there and everybody there is there to take each other's head off is not what happens. And if you're curious about jiu-jitsu, go to an academy, just sit in and watch. Then you're going to see, like, there are 13 years old girls choking at adults, and everybody's laughing about it. And you know what I mean? Which will teach you, like, look, the skill is actually superior to power, but everybody's laughing. It's just a good vibe. It's just a good vibe, and you are actually safe. The time that something gets crazy, and look, most academies also shake out these guys. If You know, if we have a new guy that going berserker, you trust that we send in the enforcers.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah, go roll with him. Yeah. You know what I mean? And humble him a little bit. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like we are there. The black belts are there. You know what I mean? I'm 220 pounds of, you know, I'm coming right at you, you know, and, you know, and we'll stop you. Right. So we shake out the crazy ones that are there for the wrong reason anyway. So you're going to be in a safe environment. And just sit in, just watch. You'll see. Absolutely. And then you will see the benefits of, you know, like if you're a girl, for example, right? You just gained 100 brothers. That if somebody's messing with you, these guys will show up at your school.
100%.
You know what I mean? It's like you have 100 brothers that can fight. You know what I mean? And they will show up. It's just one of those things. We all help each other. It's a family. So that's one of the greatest benefits I feel I gain, that I have hundreds and hundreds of friends around in the world. I land in Dubai and then the guys are already there. Let's go train. I'm like, guys, let me take a shower first. You know what I mean? And anywhere I go, from Australia to Japan to the Emirates to Europe, I have friends and they all like, let's go roll. You know. And then we go eat and we hang out, and it's just an amazing network. And I never seen this in any other martial arts or activity, that it's this tight. And you know, I mean, this whole podcast we were talking about the benefits of what you gain. Because look, at one point, I say this a lot, but I'm going to say this again. At one point in life, you're going to have to make a decision, right? That is this world happening to you? Or are you happening to this world? Because this is black and white. This is not something you can sit on a fence, right? This is either you perceive the world this way or that way. And if you perceive the world is happening to you, then you're a victim for the rest of your life, forever. Yeah. This is why this is happening to me. All this is happening to me. Why me? Why did I stub my toes in a couch? Well, the couch was there. You stubbed your toes. You know, it didn't happen to you. You did that, right? So the couch didn't jump, right? So, and if you perceive it the way like I am happening to the world, then I think it's correct, you know, and there's nothing egoist about it. The world was here before I was born. Assumedly, actually. I'm going to put that there. Assumedly, because perception is a tricky thing, you know what I mean? Yeah. But as we understand right now, the world was here before I was born. So that means that whatever I bring to this world, I am affecting. So I am happening to this world. I was born into this world and now I am happening. And whatever I do, all my actions, everything I will ever do will make a change in this physical reality. I love that, man. So I am affecting it, right? That means two things. A, I am happening to the world, so I have to handle life as such. I am here and creating and doing things. I am happening to this world, but that also comes with the backside of that coin. I am also responsible for every single thing I ever do or say, because I am affecting this world. So whatever I do here will affect the people around me, the physical existence, and maybe it affects things for generations to come. Depends on, you know, what scale you were affecting the world with, you know. So, you know, if you decided to build pyramids, well, or the pyramids, you know what I mean? It's, you know, so this is kind of, and then it also reminds you that don't make your life, what I say, I wouldn't say pointless, but do something. You know, like it's just the saddest thing. You were here, born, ate, shit, died. That's not, you know, do something, make it into a spectacle. You know, there's this one existence, you know, and so that comes all together. So as I said, you have to decide if the world happens to you or you happening to the world. So martial arts is definitely one of the best training methods, because again, this is not just physical. In fact, you know, if somebody knows how to fight without the mental, spiritual skills, you're just a brawler. Yeah, right. You know, that's not a martial artist. You're a brawler. You know. Yeah. You know, that's not the same. I'm talking about becoming a martial artist, and so I would say from all martial arts, Jiu-Jitsu, I'm recommending, because you can do this for a long time to come. I have guys that are in their 80s training. Again, 70s. You don't want to mess with them, man. No joke, right? And think about it, a 70 years old man or woman for that, you know what I mean, is you know, somebody to deal with. You know, this is, you know, that's amazing.
It is.
And
yeah.
so, but it's not just the physical skills. As I said, it rewires you. You become a different person, and it's not too late. You know, there's an old anecdote about, you know, the cave. You know, that it's basically parallel to enlightenment. It's one of those Buddhist anecdotes that it doesn't matter how long it was dark in the cave. It could be a million years, but once you lit a candle, now it's lit. So, you know, what that means really is that it doesn't matter that for 60 years you were whoever, you know what I mean? Maybe you were weak-minded, maybe nothing happened to you in life, maybe, I don't know, whatever, your life went sideways, right? So that was 60 years of darkness. But you start today, you know, and that light will come. You start to get rewired. See what I mean?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's never too late. You know what I mean? This is the thing about enlightenment, you know, that you can get, you know, illuminated by any time and any age, you know. So there's nothing ever too late. In fact, I feel like, you know, what are we doing in this existence, right? Every single one of us has a very unique perception. And so we are all experiencing this universe in a very different way, right? We have our own filters, right? So we don't know what's going on, but let's assume that we are all feeding this universal consciousness with a unique experience that can only happen to you or me or whoever else, right? On your unique way. Nobody experiences the world the way you do, right? Or I have my own unique experience. So every single one of us has a different experience, right? So almost like us, we were nerve endings on this giant octopus of a universe, right? And every single one of us is a nerve ending and a receptor, right? So if you stop perceiving, right, then you become useless. I think this is why people who stop doing things just die. You know, if at 70 you decide like, hey, you know what, I'm going to learn a piano at 70. Well, now this is an interesting experience for the universe perspective. Well, look at this 70 years old learning the piano. That's an interesting experience. Well, look at this 70 years old learning Jiu-Jitsu. That's a unique, interesting experience. Now you have a function again. You don't have a function if you do nothing. If you're not bringing anything to this world but using its resources, eat, shit, die. That's not useful.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of, again, there is no proof, or it's just a theory that I'm saying. But if that's the case, if we are just a receptor, a nerve ending on this giant universe, then do your job.
Yeah.
Be a receptor. Do something. You know, experience something.
I think that's so important, man. Like I'm actually personally, I'm a big follower of Stoicism, and that's something they talk about a lot in Stoicism. It's just that you have to have a purpose, you have to have an obstacle that you're constantly working to overcome, or a skill that you're looking to improve. And yeah, Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, for a lot of people, man, it's one of the ultimate ways to you know, to add things like that to your life. And you know, there's something you said earlier I wanted to circle back to real fast, if you don't mind. You were talking about how with one of the obstacles people might have in Jiu-Jitsu is injuries. If they have a job, if they have if it can impact their work or their way of life. Over the years, I've trained with a lot of people who had to be particularly mindful of avoiding injuries because it could directly impact their ability to make money. Off the top of my head, I remember a guy who was a cell phone tower technician, and he had to be real cautious with injuries because of the physical demands of his job. Right. And it's kind of funny because earlier you mentioned that when Hoist pulled that prank on you, the first thing you said was you were concerned about your hands, and I can anyone that knows what you do knows why, right? So if you were to injure your hands or your wrist, that would make playing guitar pretty challenging. I interviewed Matt Heafy from Trivium years ago, and he mentioned that before touring, he avoids chokes to prevent his vocals from being affected. And I think I've heard Dave Mustaine say something similar as well. What measures do you take to avoid injuries that could impact your performances?
Right. So Matt, for example, Matt, I helped him find his first Jiu-Jitsu academy.
No way. Oh, that's awesome.
We're good friends. We were on tour together and we were training, and he was there looking at what were you guys doing? And I talked him into Jiu-Jitsu. I'm really happy that he stuck with it.
That's cool.
I just congratulated. He just got his black belt on March 4th.
Yeah.
March 4th, right? funny date, March 4th, right? That's a perfect date for that. Keep going, right? But yeah, I congratulated him. Like, man, I'm really proud of you that you stuck with it, because me also being a guitar player, I know that it's in quote dangerous, somewhat. You have to know what you're doing. Well, look, with a couple of things I do. One of them, again, the ego has to stay at the door, right? And so I will lose a fight. I will lose a world championship, which I have. Over, what? I'm not 100% I can, get my way out of this particular situation, right? If it's 50-50, it's too high risk. I have to be like 80% sure that I can hitchhike my way out of an armbar, for example. You know what I mean? Chokes I'm not so concerned about, but, anything to do with arm, the joints of my arm, shoulder, I'm not gonna try to keep rolling out of omoplatas when it's really tight. And, there are certain things that I will be super cautious of. So it's one of those things that I had to drop the ego that I don't care if you're a white belt and you got me, I'm going to give it to you. I don't care. I'm not the guy like, oh, I'm a black belt, I have to, I don't give a shit, man. Awesome. It's my career, my life, my livelihood, and my responsibility to my guys, my band, and all the people that working for us. You know what I mean? So if I'm out, that means 200 people are out of the job. My crew, roadies, managements, everyone. So I have to be conscious of that. And so what number one is that you know where not to. I don't ever go berserker, even in again national championships, competitions, wherever I go. The guys I roll with, actually, I hear this all the time. People would tell me like, man, you even fight really smooth, because I don't really force. I try to beat you with technique, right? I'm not gonna steal, I'm not gonna steal a submission by power, right? Because again, now that after talking about my philosophy anyway, now you probably can see that it's stealing a submission with power is not fulfilling to me. I'm always impressed by the guys that like flow like water. Really, they just. You know what I mean? Yeah. Nah, I'm a super heavyweight, so I'm not gonna flow like I flow like a rock. You know what I mean? I flow like a boulder. You know what I mean? So it's basically when you're fighting me and my best friend called gravity. Yeah, right. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I go. I unleash the flabalanche. You know what I mean? On your soul, but that's kind of how this works. So but good. I'm jealous of those guys, you know what I mean? Like they do all the berimbolo stuff and spinning, and I'm like, oh man, if I can do that. But I just come in and it just get, that's pretty much me. Smash. But I just smash, right? But for me, I always get impressed by the guys, like win with technique. So I'm trying to do that though. So and so I don't go full berserker ever. I roll really smooth. Even when I compete, I'm super conscious and roll really smooth. So that's the number one, and know when you're in trouble, and don't be an egoist. Tap out, you got to fight another fight. You got, versus now I'm out for 6 months for an injury. That's number one. Number two is I tape, but I tape very differently from a lot of people. And the way I tape is sort of a Vulcan style. I'm going to show you. I tape 2 fingers, this 2 and this 2, right?
Nice.
And so the reason I'm doing that is because, I see a lot of people just put the tape on the joints. I don't necessarily see the point in that, other than if you have tape on the top of your joint. In judo, especially when we grab even more, sometimes you lose the skin here from grabbing the gi too hard, so that you can have right. So there is some point of covering those joints because of that reason, right? Sure. The same thing that people cover their their toes, the top of their toes, because of the mat rash. You know what I mean? If you haven't been on a mat for a while, the first couple of days you're gonna destroy your upper side of your toes, right?
Yeah. So
you cover them. So I see why, but for me, this is about injury. This is about how to save my fingers, right? And so my, and so far, knock on wood, it never had a finger injury really. And because if I tape these 2 fingers together, how I do it, is not too tight. I leave a little space. So there's a tape right here on the bottom, and there's one here. So the gi can't really slide in between my fingers. Because if I'm going to break something, it's going to break because it's a one digit. When I tape two digits together, like if you were actually injured, you would do that, right? So it's two bones. It's harder to break. The gi can't separate. And then there's these two, right? So there's always two bones supporting, right? And you can't slide something in between. And even if I accidentally hit right straight forward, even then it's not one finger getting hit, it's two, right? So even with no gi, I feel like it would be. Another thing is the dexterity. I see those gloves where these two fingers tie together. I don't see how that would save me, because this finger and this finger is still alone, right? And if you do this, right, and you close these two, it feels there's a weird ligament strain. Like this is not, I don't see power here.
Yeah.
With these two, I have power. With these two, I have power. So now my dexterity is still there, right? So I can fold all this independently. And this has power, this has power. And the two together has power. See what I mean? So my grip stays powerful. I mean, it's decades of experimentation. Awesome. I started judo when I was 9 to figure this out. And it sort of saved me from ever having, one single finger getting, hit. Now, I tape, even if I'm going to go on a mat and say, hey, I'm going to show you a quick technique. Sometimes, let's say I'm sitting in class and I'm not training that day for whatever reason, right? And somebody's doing something and I'm going to just jump on a mat, or I teach a class and I jump on a mat, like, let me show you that. I will never do that if my fingers are not taped. Because it's always that one time, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I always tape, except this one time.
That's when it'll happen. Yeah.
So I'm religious about that. I will not step on that mat ever if my finger is not taped.
That's awesome. Well, I love how mindful you are too about like the specific motions of the fingers and why you put them together. Right. I don't think anyone would blame you personally if you taped your fingers like this, because they would get it.
Right. Yeah.
But I like the idea, or that. Yeah. But I like the idea of like a buddy system, like you said, because it makes perfect sense. I like the thought that you put into that. That's really great, man.
It works.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously, like when you have a career, whatever you do, if it requires particular use of your hands, I mean, that's one of the first things that can get really torn up, especially in gi jiu-jitsu. So, man, you gotta definitely listen to this advice, people, because it's really good
that's
advice.
Interesting because this is a constant, not an argument, but this discussion. Where is your finger in danger, in gi jiu-jitsu or no gi jiu-jitsu, right? And I have a different opinion in it, because when you are no gi, and you try to grab something, you're pretty much coming at me with open hands usually.
Yeah, true.
So I feel like I'm way more in danger and I have not much to grab. You know what I mean? So, like what do I grab? Like, I can cup your neck and, but triceps, this and that, but there's a lot of this, right?
Yeah, sure.
When I wear a gi, when I'm going for my opponent, I have a very specific thing I'm going to grab, and it was kind of designed to be grabbed, And so as long as you're conscious of your grip, right? As long as you're conscious of your grip and how much you grip and what kind of grip, I always felt that I'm safer at our gi jiu-jitsu, because there's a specific thing I'm going for versus just being out there with open fingers and, I don't know what's going to happen. I am grabbing very specific things that were designed for that very specific reason, to be grabbed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why I always felt like actually I feel safer, way safer if I ever kind of hit my finger, it was always sort of an accident of a stab of a leg going, you know what I mean? It was never from the grip.
Interesting.
Right?
I wonder how much of that has to do with your background in judo, though, because when you were a little kid, you were real used to grabbing the correct places and the correct positions.
The push-ups, the pull-ups on the gi. We did all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
We were trained that way. I mean, I do have the gorilla grip. Now, on the very beginning, it was working against me in jiu-jitsu, to tell you the truth, because I kept grabbing that way on the ground. You know what I mean? Like it's also a habit. If I grab you, man, unlikely that you're going anywhere. It's really, I'm not blowing that,
No. Anyone that's trained with
really,
judo people, it's true.
It's difficult to, it's difficult to break my grips. You know what I mean? Like I got the silverback grips. So it's difficult to break my grips, but, and I also, there are specific ways how I flip my fingers under, you know what I mean? There, how you grip, like the grip comes from like that, not with the, you know what I mean? Like there are ways to grip, and how much I torque my grip into your gi. There's a science to that. How much, what side I'm grabbing. You know what I mean? So all the grips. This is one of the things I actually teach in classes. Grip fighting, and the psychology of the grip. And so in Jiu-Jitsu, you've been taught a lot to break the grips, right? And for example, I don't necessarily grip. I don't break grips. There are very specific grips that I would. Okay, I'm not gonna let you have that, but but it's not that's not the way. I mean, everybody has their way. So I'm not talking shit on anybody's ideas, techniques, philosophy.
Sure.
I can only say what works for me. So in the beginning, yes, it was a little bit of a challenge for me to not to grab too hard on the ground, because I on the ground don't have the ability, which I have standing, that I can get away from you. On the ground, we wrapped up. So if I'm grabbing you on the ground, I can't make an explosive motion to get away from you. So I can get wrist locked on the ground if I grab too hard. So that took me some time to get rid of that habit. So I don't, so I monkey grip and I don't, just nail you on the ground. So that was a challenge for me because of the habits. But standing, obviously I grip really hard, but see that the philosophy there, that there's almost no situation where I am just going to put hands on you, right? Like I see this a lot. People come out and then they establish this 50-50, especially heavyweights. They don't like to pull guards because, again, I'm a boulder, man. You don't want me on top on you, right? So heavyweights, super heavyweights, they don't like to pull guards unless it's necessary, because once, your power weight ratio is not linear. So it's not like if you're 170 pounds, you can bench press 170. If you're 250, you can bench press 250. That's not how it works. Yeah. See what I mean? So if you are, a 150, 170 pound guy, it's much easier for you to get 150, 170 pounds off of you than you're a 250 pounds and another 250 pounds laying on you. It's not the same, man. So, so because of that, our weight class doesn't like to pull guard unless it's absolutely necessary, right? Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of, standing, pushing around, right? And so in that, if I come out and put a hand on you, right? I say this all the time. I teach this, that I don't grab and establish a grip. If I grab you, it's 100%. It's an attack, and I am moving you. There's no static grip. There's no such thing. Waiting for the dance or the music to start so we can, you can dance. No, it's an attack. I'm pulling or pushing. There's no such thing. I grab and then just hang out there. Because if you grab me and you just hang out there, I will 100% use your grips against you. Yeah. So because, my philosophy on that too is that it's, if somebody has a good grip on you, then it's just how people think. Like you would have to train yourself out of this, consciously. When you grab someone and you have a good grip, right? Then like, man, I got this guy. You're not gonna let that grip go. So if you have let's say a good deep lapel grip on me, right? Until I reach for it to break it, you're not particularly in danger, in your opinion, right? Because you have a good grip,
sure,
right? And if I reach for it, then either you fight for that grip or you let it go to save your fingers. If you know what I mean. So it's your choice at that point. That if I try to break your grip, if you're gonna just let it go or we fight. But what if I don't reach for that grip at all? You have a grip on me. If I step back, 100% of the time, you're going to keep that grip and extend your arm.
Yes.
And you just gave me the hole I need for my Ippon Saunaga or whatever else I want to do. See what I mean? Yeah. So I use my opponent's grips against them all the time. In fact, it's one of my cornerstone of my particular stand-up philosophy. that if you cross grip me, man, you're in deep trouble, So if you cross grip me, a lot of people cross grip because with the front of your, with this bone, you can sort of, you can put it on the neck, you can, cross check in some way, you can control somebody's body easier.
Manipulation.
Now, right now in judo, you can't have that grip. You can only have that grip if you attack from that grip. You can't grab it and hang out there because it's a very dangerous grip. So if you cross grip me, same thing gonna happen. I'm gonna step back. I'm gonna touch it. I'm gonna move my shoulder back. So right now your arm is extending here, and once I turn my shoulder, now I'm locking it. And all I have to do is just go under and lift you. And it's a standing arm bar. Yeah. And it's a lightning fast. You know what I mean? So it's all comes from the psychology that you have a good grip and you're just holding that.
Yeah.
And because you're like, oh, I got it, right? And but you're not realizing like now you're attached to my body, so wherever I move, you're gonna go, and I still have two hands. So that's my stand-up, philosophy. And I'm again, I tape. I have strong grips, and when you reaching for breaking my grip, then I let it go. I reset. I'm not going to fight for that. I'm not going to endanger my, and on the ground, it took me years, but I'm now at the place where I don't grip like that anymore because that was a challenge for me. But
that's incredible.
Yeah, but so basically, so as a guitar player, obviously, I have to be super conscious of this. So that's why I'm talking about this in such detail, because I think about it in such detail, because this is, what I mean? This is important that I don't, screw up my fingers.
Well, man, I love this. And I love how it led to really some very deep concepts about gripping. I think sometimes people overlook the act of gripping. Like grip fighting is such an important facet of grappling. And I love hearing just how deep it can go. Like the idea of someone grabbing you and you not even addressing their grip, but you're stepping back and causing them to, you're creating kazushi. You're creating them to be off balance or stepping forward or overreaching and leaning. It's awesome, man.
Right.
So I definitely appreciate
like the kuzushi. You just mentioned it. That people who don't know what that is, kuzushi is basically the direct translation of the word is crumbling.
Crumbling, yes. Yeah.
Crumbling. That's the direct translation. So what it really means, I mean, Jiu-Jitsu practitioners know, but if somebody watching that who doesn't, is basically that moment when you break the balance of something, right? And we're trying to, before you can throw somebody or take somebody down, you have to achieve this moment of you broke their balance. And there's a science to that, how to do that. And I, obviously coming from decades of judo, there's the Kodokan's way, and there's the European judo's way, how they do this, right? And I had to kind of modify that for jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu is a little bit of a different environment. There are certain things that can happen, behaviors, basically dictated by the rules. So the rules dictate the behavior, right? So certain things, like for example, in judo, I can't really touch your legs anymore, at least. Pulling guard is inconceivable, So there are certain things that will not happen. So I'm not training for that. It's inconceivable that you're just going to sit down. The same way that it's inconceivable to me on a street fight. You're not going to sit down. Somebody breaking into your house and you sit down. All right, come on, man. What?
As soon as you crawl on top of me, you're in trouble, pal. Yeah.
Come into my guard. What? So anyway, so those are things that naturally would not happen, and I and in my previous martial arts I would not train for that. So when I'm bringing over techniques and concepts and ideas from judo, I have to consider things that will happen or can happen in under different set of rules. For example, one of the ways to break somebody's balance, there are a lot of throws starts with a push upward, right? Yeah. So when you're pushing upward one side of the body, what happens, that part of you, that leg gets light, you know what I mean? And then you can sweep it, you can, that's where the breaking the balance comes from. But in jiu-jitsu, right, if I start pushing you up, I actually giving you an opportunity to jump guard. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Which in judo would never happen,
yes.
Right? So if I push you up, there's a very strong possibility that you're going to jump guard, maybe even jump a triangle or a jumping armbar, or, there are situations that, I have to not consider. So a lot of these things I had to modify, how I achieve the kuzushi. And so I actually, and it's pretty funny because when now people, especially my judo friends, Some of them are coral belts now, they started together. So those guys look at my stuff and like, bro, what happened to you? Because I was that guy. I would turn under you. And then once I had you, I bump, like I get on my toes just to get that air. I wanted to scrape your feet, on the ceiling, just so I have that, So I would be particularly nasty with my throws, to make it photo up worthy, right? and so my judo guys like, dude, what's going on? Like, what was that? And I'm like, bro, it's jiu-jitsu. It's not pretty, but when I throw somebody now, like certain things, like kosotogari, or there are certain, like ochi, kochi, all those things. Most of the time, those things will land you in the guard or half guard.
Yes,
I don't want to be there. See what I mean? So immediately the techniques that land me in the guard or land me in half guard, I tend to not do them unless it's absolutely necessary, right? I try to throw you so I end up in side control, right? So then a big set of techniques are out the window, because I don't, I use them for setting you up, right? So I would go for an inside reap to bump your leg, because I know that now you're going to step back so I can sweep the other leg. Yeah. So, I use those techniques, but just for setup. I'm not going to throw them. Even if it's there, even if I know I can go, I will not. I will just use it to set up something that I can throw so I have side control. That's one thing, because I have to think of that. When I break somebody's balance, the kazushi, instead of pushing upward, the way I started to teach this, because it's also a challenge how you teach people and explain concepts that are actually very simple, but if you didn't do it for a lifetime, it's not something that just comes to you, obviously, right? Sure, yeah. And I would do with people, I would say like, okay, the whole class, everybody stand straight. So I might make them just stand straight. All right, now lower one of your shoulders. So they lower one of their shoulders. I'm like, okay, lift the leg under the shoulder. And you realize you cannot.
Yeah. And
all I did is just torque a little bit. So it's not like you're leaning over crazy. You just lowered one of your shoulder, and immediately your spine misaligned, your hip locks, and now your weight is on that leg. That leg is stuck now. You can't lift it. Yeah. And I know that. So what happens? If I come out and I grab a lapel, an upper neck lapel, sleeve, whatever, I'm going to pull you. Look, I'm not going to lift you. I'm going to pull you down. So I'm using my power and my weight to pull you down. In essence, I just did that. I torqued your back. I lowered your shoulder. So now I know that you're stuck on that leg. You cannot lift that leg, right? So if you're stuck this way, any kind of pressure coming from this direction will stumble you over. If I push you the other way, you can always step out and regain the balance. So what happens is, like, once I misalign you, I will never, ever let you regain that. Yeah. I vectorize my fight. And the second I torque you, everything I'm going to do, going to go into that direction. I'm not going to do like, I pulled you and then I snap under you. Because if I snap under you, I moved you that way and I change direction. That moment for a jiu-jitsu guy is enough to try to counter. Well, also judo guys can counter too. But, but in jiu-jitsu specifically, once I unbalance you, once I push you on and make you heavy on one feet, it's almost 100%. I am going to push you in that direction, and all my attacks will be vectorized to make you stumble. So those little things that I had to modify. I had to modify, judo stuff to jiu-jitsu. And when I teach particular classes, I generally do takedown classes and competition classes if I teach.
That's incredible.
And generally that's what I do. This is the concepts and the ideas of what happens and why, and how to achieve the kuzushi, how to react to certain things, how to stop throws, how to, what I mean? Like where you put your weight and there are just so many of these little nuances of, like, even if you're already locked up with somebody, like you're 50-50, right? A mistake people make there is now both of you have a grip, and then this pushing and shoving happens. Again, you forgot that you can let it go at any given moment. So if you don't let it go, nothing's going to happen. You guys are just going to do that game, and somebody's going to pull guard. So once you're there, right, two things happen. One, if you pay attention to this, what I just showed you, right? You can feel it. If somebody's shoulder is moving, you already know that where the weight is. I don't have to look at your feet. I see you, right? I'm feeling you. Even if I close my eyes, I feel this, like your shoulder went lower. If this shoulder is lower, then that's where your weight is. You can't fake that. Then I know that now my attack gonna go that way, right? So, so all those little things, how to feel people's weight, how to, and if you locked up, don't be afraid of let something go. Make a swift move and let this hand go and attack. Otherwise, you're going to just stand there, And it's the same thing, again, that habit of I have a good grip, so I'm going to have to just, And so that's the kind of stuff that I'm going through, how to manipulate somebody's motion, how to vectorize yours, how to vectorize your attacks, and, how to lure somebody or generally step right into it. So,
this is, man,
so that's the stuff.
This is incredible. Yeah. All of this is the reason why I love the idea of just hybrid grappling, people coming from different backgrounds and different styles and bringing it all in together. Cause man, you get all these really cool, different concepts and flavors and things that you learn from each art. Every art has something to bring that's valuable, to the overall art of grappling. So cool.
And if you're a philosopher, you can also know where they come from, yes, right? Let's say you start a fight, you're coming straight at me, straight back. You're a judo guy. You're coming low, right? I can see when you're a wrestler. I can see when you came from jiu-jitsu. I can see when you're a judo guy. When you're on the ground, right? Same thing. I say this stuff all the time too. Like, in academy situations when you train, most of the training starts from the ground because it's just simply liability, If there are 100 kids on a mat and people start throwing each other,
Yeah, it could be, liability.
Yeah. Right. So that's why mainly, competition class we start standing, but anything else starts on the ground. But even on the ground, you can see how somebody starts rolling, right? If they sit down, you already know that they are guard players. If you put your ass down and you sit down, I know you're a guard player. Then I know that, then there's no circumstance that I'm going to go to your guard. I will do everything to avoid that, right? Then you can see the half guarders. They sit down and a little bit sideways.
Yes.
You're half guard player, right? Then, so you can see what they're about by just the posture. So those are the philosophy part and the observant part of martial arts, that I look at you and I kind of know where you're going and what you're gonna do and where you come from and what it is that about to happen. And obviously I am going to counter that. Like, I'm immediately taking your power out of the equation by not going to go to that.
It's incredible. I love
position.
It, man. That's so awesome. Yeah. That's so awesome, man. I love it. Well, Zoltan, man, switching gears really quick, man, something I do with every guest on the show, we play a game called the Pummel. The Pummel is basically a series of random questions. Some of these have to do with jiu-jitsu. Some of them have nothing to do with jiu-jitsu. It's basically a lightning round. But if you're down to play the Pummel, I'd love to play this game with you.
All right. Let's pummel.
Let's do it, brother.
I'm not that good at this, other than other than the class. I pummel in then I pummel.
All right, here we go, brother. First question: what's the worst job you ever had in your life?
Oof. You know what? I know this is not gonna be a popular answer, but I never had a bad job.
Nice.
Again, I started martial arts when I was 9, and we had this whole podcast talking about that. I don't accept the position. I don't do things I don't like to do. I find a way. So,
that's awesome.
I never had a job I hated.
That's awesome. Man.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. What do you think is a secret talent that you have that people might not know about? There's a saying that the strong survive, and they contributed to Darwin. Darwin actually never said that. It's the most adaptable that survive, and I think that's what it is. It's, you have to adopt and figure out the way. Now, we talked about particle science to going to spirituality, going to the idea of perception, right? And it's really that you decide what you perceive. You decide everything that ever happened in your life, you file it a certain way, right? So the memory depends on not actually what happened, but how you filed it. Did you file it as a negative or as a positive? Like, if you look at people with trauma, how do you train people out of trauma? You train people out of trauma because you bring up the experience that what happened,
talk about it. And because the body and the mind saves everything in a not digitally but in a chemical way. So when you relive a trauma, your mind has to create the same chemical compounds and the same chemical situation when the trauma happened, right? Yeah. And but when you resave, the new save is not a carbon copy. The new save is different. This is why our memory erodes. Because you remember something and then you bring up that memory, then you color it a little bit and resave it. 10 years from now, this memory is completely different. So, it started with and this guy came at me in the parking lot. 10 years now, so these 7 guys came at me in this parking lot. Yeah. So that's how that happens, right? And so the way you train people out of trauma is that you bring up the experience, talk about it, and resave it in a way that is not bad. Right? Now imagine if you were conscious of this from the get-go. So if you're conscious of, you live a mindful life, when you understand that, as long as you're alive, there's a train of thought, right? And you have control over this train of thought. I decide what I'm thinking, right? That is living a mindful mind. So this, so you don't let your mind just run around and, because you say, oh, this thing just popped in my mind. Well, that's not the case. Something reminded you of something. There's no such thing that your mind just goes somewhere. Your mind was somewhere there before. Yeah. So as long as you understand that it's a pinball machine, but at no moment it ever stopped and just did nothing, then you can follow your train of thoughts. And as long as you follow your train of thoughts and you are in charge with your mind and your, like I always say this to, happiness is not a mind state, it's a skill. It is a skill. Like you have to control your mind and figure out how to, I'm not going to get depressed. I am not going to think that. And you can tell that to your mind, no, we're not going there. I'm not going to think about this. I'm not, you can control your mind. So that's the skill. So if you have that skill, then, let's say I had to take care of someone at one point that was, a dependent person, dependent on substances, let's say, right? And I'm like, and you can think like, fuck, man, this is a nightmare, especially if it's a person that, either a family member or somebody important to you. So it's not somebody that just throw this guy in the ditch, right? Somebody important to you. Then it's a real struggle, because, you have to save somebody from an addiction or something, right? And it's extremely difficult and painful for the person who's around and trying to save the individual, right? And but you can change your mind, and instead of thinking like, what a struggle, you're thinking like, well, I would never have an experience without this, how to take care of somebody. I would have never had this life experience to understand that I'm selflessly have to take care of this person now. That is the experience. Yeah. So I can switch from like, what a drag and how difficult it is and how much time and energy it takes to, I'm never going to have the chance again in this lifetime to feel how it feels like a broken person is here now and I am the one who has to somehow put this person back together, right? So once you switch your mind, how you perceive it, then all of a sudden, it's not a drag anymore, right? It's not a pain anymore. So that's what I mean. Like you have this is an incredible power that we have, that we decide. We have 100% power of what we think. We have 100% power of how I perceive a certain situation. So the talent, I would say, is my ability to manipulate how I perceive something. That is the talent. So maybe for somebody it's a shitty job, but I can look at it like, man, but you know what? I wouldn't have this experience any other way. Now I know how it feels when I have to, let's say, sit at the machine and do this all day. Okay, this sucks. So what did we learn? I don't want to do this. So, okay, so this was an awesome experience that embedded in me, that this is what I don't want to do and I will never do. Or you have shitty circumstances, let's say with your parents, right? And a lot of people get broken by that. And you can switch the perception and watch your parents and say, look, I have a book, a real life study of what not to do, what not to become. So what I'm witnessing, seemingly horrible, but what I'm learning right now, this is the fucking thing I'm never gonna be. Yeah. See what I mean? Yeah. So that's again a thing that you can look at even your parents and say, okay, I don't have to have a feeling toward them. I don't have to hate them. I don't have to, I'm observing. And as long as I'm observing, I'm learning what not to do. Like I can see them arguing. Say like, well, oh yeah, you shouldn't have picked up that argument because now, you know what I mean? You watched the game from the outside, right? And so if you're an observant person, then, and you have this understanding that you're happening to this world, it's your decision what you think, then now you can manipulate how you perceive whatever is happening to you, whatever it is. When I, let's say I broke my leg, that sucks, right? But is there something to learn there? Yeah, and as maybe cheesy it sounds to somebody, I will find a way that this is going to be a positive.
That's excellent.
Somehow I'm going to find a way that this is going to be a positive. So a shitty job to me is basically a massive, one of the best teaching opportunities why I am never going to be a cog in the machine. And I will fight to the teeth that I will not have a boss, that nobody will tell me what to do. I will be always an independent person. I don't have a boss. Nobody tells me what to do. I am my own boss. And it's like that for decades. You know what I mean? Because I didn't accept that position. I will never would. It's just not going to happen. And that's how. Because, yeah, that shitty job that would have been shitty for me was, oh, fuck, no, I'm not doing this. No way.
Yeah.
That's, you know what I mean?
That's incredible, man. I love it. To reference Stoicism again, it reminds me a lot of a quote. I think it was Epictetus that said it, where he said, the things that hurt us in life aren't so much the things that happen, it's how we perceive the things that happen. And that's very,
literally.
Yeah, very much in line with that. So very, very good, man. Yeah. Awesome answer. Here's another one for you. What's your favorite bad food to eat? Favorite junk food?
Favorite junk food? Sweets. It's really bizarre though, because I never buy sweets, right? If you want to screw up my life, this is how you do it. Just send me sweets and I'll be fat. You know what I mean? Because here's the thing, I would never go to the store and buy anything sweet. I would never go and pick up a cake. This is just not going to happen, right?
Yeah.
If my girl brings it home, it's like, man, really? Like, oh, you're really doing this to me. You know what I mean? Like right there. That's my failure. Like I should, and then I'm pretty conscious. So I should be, I'm much better at it now. But because self-restraint, you can put my favorite tiramisu cake, you know what I mean? With the perfect amount of rum and raisins in it. And, and that's difficult for me to go, like not go berserker and just fucking, but, and I shouldn't, sugars are the worst. That's your number one enemy, the most addictive substance in the world. And all sicknesses come from the sugars and this acidity it creates. So I know in every way why it is bad. And the interesting thing about this, it's as long as I'm, practicing my mindfulness, I'm completely conscious of what I'm doing. And I'm like, I'm on top of my world. I won't eat it. Even though I fucking love, you know what happens? If somebody distracts me with something or some crazy catastrophe happens I have to solve, and I'm talking on a phone and I start eating it, not even realizing that I'm eating it. That is still my arch enemy. I'm working on it. But tiramisu cake, I'm coming for you. So
it sounds like if you're going to compete at one of the next LA Opens or at the American Nationals, and you see that Zoltan's in your category, a good strategy could be to mail him tiramisu the day before.
And exactly. And what happens? I'm gonna blow the weigh-ins. I'm gonna get DQ'd by overweight. Right. That's how you take me out.
That's excellent. But, I love it, man. Zoltan, what do you think is your biggest phobia?
Phobia. I don't have fears, like heights, speeds, all that. In fact, in sometimes I'm thinking I should, you know what I mean? So I don't necessarily, I don't like, I don't know. I don't like dirty people, you know what I mean? People not necessarily people, just dirt. Like, wash your gi before we roll, you know what I mean? Yeah. And that's stuff. But even then, I don't necessarily have phobia, because phobia would be like, like people generally have like claustrophobia and things like that. Not necessarily. I don't, again, but it's all coming from, it's again, you have to go back to, I'm looking at a situation and analyze it, right?
Yeah.
Once you're conscious of something and once you analyze something, once you really look at it, right? It's like your fears, because what a phobia is basically a fear. But again, I spent decades of meditation, decades of transcendental meditation on this very subject of eradicating my fears. But you know what? I'll tell you one, because this is going to be a good example. So because this way, it doesn't sound like I'm full of shit, because you can see an actual example that I had a phobia and how I solved it.
Cool.
So every time I would tune my guitar, it took me a minute even to recognize that I'm doing this. So I would, I put the new strings on a guitar and I'm tuning my guitar, and I would always I was far away. I was always had a phobia that the guitar string gonna break.
Hit you in the face.
Pop me in the eye.
Yeah.
And it take my eye, right? And so that was a phobia, right? Because every time I would tune my guitar, I would just, take my face away from it, right? So that I could consider that a phobia, right?
Sure, yeah.
Because it's a fear of, guitar or stringophobia, whatever you're gonna call it.
Whatever you want to name it, yeah.
Like let's find a Latin name for, guitar string. So that was a phobia, right? And at one point I became conscious of like, wow, weird, why am I doing that? And you're doing transcendental meditation, which I did my whole life, is about, you have the power to become a different person. You don't have to accept the cards you were dealt, right? You can consciously become a different person. And that is why it's called transcendental. You transcend into a different, being. And so in that process, there's a practice that you have to sort of go back in time and look at the information you were given, which means, anything your parents taught you, anything your environment taught you, anything your school taught you, and consciously question those things, that were they sound, were they real, or am I living my life, it happens a lot, for example, to super religious people, that they have religious ideas, deeply embedded, and so now their entire life is based on some fear and some guilt and some, you know what I mean? So, and I'm not to pick on anybody religious. That's not the point in it. Is just an example of, of how certain things can embed something that you will live your entire life unconsciously, bound by rules that you were not even aware when they were, inserted in you.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like, I just saw a video the other day where, somebody pretended to put a harness on a horse and was leading the horse around, and the horse was following. That's kind of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. How weird, right? The horse totally thought that it had, and so had the harness, I think what it's called, on him.
Harness, yeah.
Right. And behaved as it was there. Right. Or the other experiment when you put the fleas in the cup and put a lid on it, and they stop jumping, and then they eventually realize they can't jump out. Yeah. Once you take off the lid, the fleas don't jump out because they got used to how far they can jump.
Wow.
See, there's another habits are embedded in you that are prohibiting your development and basically locking you into these mind states and these ideas, and you keep doing those things unconsciously. So transcendental meditation has a very specific practice where you revisit all these ideas. Basically take a giant flashlight and start looking around in your mind. Why are you afraid of something? Why? Why are you afraid? What makes you afraid? So you have to go down. What's the phobia? What's the, even teaching, somebody taught you something, don't cross your eyes because it's going to stay that way.
Yeah.
But really? Is that real? You know what I mean? So there is shit that we were taught and we don't even think about it, and it's in there. And really not really qualified people taught you those things.
Right,
you know what I mean?
Exactly. So, like old wives' tales passed down and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm doing this practice, right? And in one of those practices, I found why I have a phobia of the guitar string.
Really? Okay.
So in this meditation, I realized, like, oh my God. So when I was a little kid, there was a commercial on television. It was a life insurance commercial. And I was probably 6-7 years old, And I remember this commercial, and I remember it in my meditation, and how strange that it comes back decades later, actually. But I was looking for it. In the commercial, there was a little girl playing a violin, right? And then a string kind of popped, and it went, the violin against, just the string popped. It was a metaphor the life insurance company says like, well, you never know when the metaphor is the string of life, or, because in my language, it makes sense. The string of life would discontinue, or when something pops, right?
Wow.
So you never know when you need life insurance. A 6-year-old kid didn't understand the metaphor. I just understood that, hold on, the little girl was playing the violin, the string popped, and now she needs life insurance. What happened to her?
Wow.
See what I mean?
Wow.
So this little episode, this stupid little commercial, because a 6-year-old couldn't understand the metaphor in this, right? I just directly understood that string pops, girl need life insurance, something bad happened. Oh my God.
Wow.
And this created a phobia in me for the rest of my life. When I became a guitar player, and I would be bending away from my guitar when I'm tuning it.
That's incredible. So the seed was planted when you were a little kid. Yeah.
Right. And I was unconscious. And so, but here's the thing. Most of our phobias, most people and their phobias are planted like this.
Wow.
And you don't know why you have this phobia. So when I say I don't have phobias, it's because of this, because I consciously went through my life and everything I ever done and look at what I have done, what I'm afraid of, and why I'm afraid of that, or what situation puts me at unease and why is that, right? And then you eliminate that. I mean, this is a quest of becoming a warrior. So this is also part of it. So this also goes hand in hand in jiu-jitsu or any martial arts for me, because this is part of the journey. This is the philosophical part of being a martial artist. Like I'm training my mind. I'm cleaning out the dirt. I'm cleaning out the unnecessary stuff that was taught to me, and condition myself also that, you have to be intelligent enough to have an education, right? A lot of people rely on that education. You have to be, and then you consider like, oh, I'm educated. I went to Oxford. I went to, Yale or Harvard. Yeah, well, but you have to also be intelligent enough to understand that what they taught you might be not true. You might need to question that. See what I mean? So you can't just rely on the education itself. And that's part of the part of the journey as a martial artist too. Like, oh, I know how to do this skill. Well, are you sure? Or maybe you just didn't meet a person yet who can get out of that armbar easily.
Yeah.
So maybe your skill is not just, so absolute. So I mean,
wow.
So, and it comes both physically and mentally. All the things you think are such, or things that are just are, and you have a concept what they are, they maybe not. You know what I mean?
It's incredible, man. Awesome answer.
You can't question everything, basically.
Wow.
So that's what I mean. Like I wanted to demonstrate that I'm not full of shit, that I don't really have phobias. Certain things I don't like. If you stayed with jiu-jitsu, if I went to the academy and your gi is dirty, and you stink and you smell, which we generally don't have those kind of guys. But if that happens, I will tell you to get the fuck off the mat.
Yeah, right.
Which I mean? I will not roll with you.
That's the correct answer.
I will not roll with you. Go home, wash your gi. You know what I mean? It's like I don't mince my word. I'm not afraid of saying anything to anybody. You know what I mean? So I deal with those situations. But as for phobias, literally that's so. Whoever out there watching this and you have a phobia, literally go meditate. Think about how did that happen? Why are you so scared of, somebody's afraid of spiders. Okay, well, there are some spiders you shouldn't be messing with, right?
Sure.
So if you are so afraid of spiders that is debilitating to you, then study them. So you can make the difference like, oh, this is a daddy long leg. It will do nothing. That's, tarantula. Also scary, but will do nothing really. Maybe it hurts a little bit, but if it bites you, but it's nothing. And it's just as afraid of you as you are of it, right? And I don't know, Black Widow, probably don't fuck with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So your phobia is probably based on ignorance, that you don't understand that you can squish any of these creatures. You shouldn't, but you can. So you're way more powerful than they are. And there are just certain ones that you shouldn't mess with, but that's it. Right?
Excellent.
So what is it? It's just ignorance. You don't know much about spiders. Well, then if you're so afraid of them, then go buy a book about spiders and fucking study them. And then it will go away. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
In fact, you should be doing that. Whatever phobia you have, you should be doing that. Why that is,
That's excellent, man.
Find why that is and fight it.
That's the best. That's the best answer to the phobia question I've ever gotten, man. That was very good. I appreciate that. Zoltan, what do you think is if you could pick your favorite superhero, who would be your favorite superhero?
Oh man, you have questions that are I never have a straight answer to.
No, it's all good
because. Man. That's one of those things, man. I'm not into the superhero movies at all.
What about the comics?
Did you
read the comics growing up or anything?
No,
nothing.
Nope.
Okay, cool.
I do not like superhero movies because it's kind of almost like it's a one-ups. Oh, I have this superpower. Well, hold on, I have a superpower that is more superior than what I mean.
Right, yeah.
To me, this is kind of the one-upping the superpowers.
Yeah.
And so I always looked at it that way. So I always say, I read science. I was always reading science or philosophy, or science fiction, because science fiction I always and even from science fiction, I mean, like I would read like Francis Carsaw or Asimov, Stanislav Lem, and you know what I mean. I would generally read sci-fi that has some, like if you look at Asimov, for example, right? Like that guy in 1947, I think, when he wrote iRobots or the first novel that became iRobots, where he established the rule of robotics, and there were not even robots yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or even if you go far back, like Jules Verne, right? I mean, like a lot of things like the submarine, you know what I mean, and things like that came from those science fiction. I would read those because they were possible futures.
Yeah.
So science fiction was fantastic, but this is a medium for people who have a wild imagination and some scientific leaning, but they're not necessarily scientists.
Yeah.
So they may have some crazy ideas that could be like Jules Verne's, some of his ideas became reality, so they can present that in a science fiction framework when scientists that are so precious about their science and think that they're infallible will laugh at them, right? So science fiction gives you a framework that I can present you with crazy ideas, like the Matrix, for example, right? That affected the entire world because it's plausible. What was in the Matrix. So, but if somebody came out like, hey guys, this is a hologram. We're not really alive. This is a computer program. And there are various proofs now that it probably is, and I think that's what's going on with the world. If you said that, people are going to go like, oh, look at this crazy motherfucker, right? But if you wrote a science fiction movie or a book and you put it out as a book, then you can sort of explore and go crazy and wild with your ideas without being ridiculed by the scientific community. So because of that, I find that a lot of science fiction books and science fiction novels would have novel, inventive ideas that are possible. As a possible futures, possible devices, possible technology. Like they flip from Star Trek. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so many things become a thing, right? Yeah. So, and like even the beam, the dematerializer, the beam me up Scotty thing, right? Yeah. Like if you start to talk about quantum physics, and if they really, there is actually a theoretical possibility for that, right? So so I like science fiction and read science fiction because of that, right? Because there is a plausibility of some technology and some ideas and some future, as one of my favorites is really Asimov, right? So I would go for that. If I look at like Superman and Batman, and maybe Batman was a little bit more realistic than anything because it's not really a superhero.
Yes.
But I don't know. Maybe Iron Man, because it's not really a superhero. Technological based. But when and here's the thing. But I'm not well versed in superhero world because it wasn't never my interest. Yeah. I never had the wet dream of become a superhero in that way, right? So because again, I'm not familiar. So if you were throwing superhero names at me, I wouldn't even know what's what. Obviously, I'm familiar with the movies that lately come out. Most of them I actually haven't seen. I watched some of them because of the technology, and the CGI is really good. And Guardians of the Galaxy. I think it's hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
I watched it accidentally. I was in a hotel room. I was in my hotel room with my band. We were just hanging out, and one of the guys wanted to order a movie and accidentally ordered this one, clicked on the wrong thing, because the remote control in hotels always too late. That one, it's like, oh fuck yeah. And so he ordered the wrong movie, and I remember saying, like, man, there's no chance in the universe I'm gonna watch a movie with a freaking talking raccoon. Okay, not happening.
Rocket's the best, chance, man. Rocket's the best, though.
Right. Yeah. So, but I literally said it. I said, there's no chance that I'm watching a freaking movie with a talking raccoon. And the movie started, and I'm sitting there, and it became one of my favorite movies.
That's amazing.
Like, it's hilarious. Yeah. It's a humor of that, So anyway, so I know it's a long answer for the superhero, but that's what I got. I generally, if I read, it's either philosophy and science. I don't watch superhero movies necessarily, and but I'm a big fan of science fiction. William Gibson, one of my favorites as well. Actually,
that's awesome.
I can name I read hundreds of books.
That's incredible. So cool, man. Well, Zoltan, final question for the Pummel game. If a zombie apocalypse breaks out right now, what's the first thing you do?
Zombie apocalypse. Whew. I guess that's the moment of, I have a pretty good network of lead farmers. Yeah. I was going to say Vegas is a good place to be, man. There's lots of gun ranges, lots of desert. I do own an RPG-7 rocket launcher. I'm not even kidding.
No way.
Yeah. So and I have a really good network of former operators and special operators. And when my alarm system goes off on my house, it doesn't go to ADT. I tell you that.
That's awesome.
That's the wrong house. I'm telling you that. It's the wrong house to mess with. It's actually, there's pretty funny because it happened before that I was on the road and alarm goes off. And I can see on the cameras, the SUVs, the trucks are rolling up to my house and, my guys are jumping out literally with AR-15s running in the house. I mean, it's hilarious.
That's amazing.
So, and it's funny because one of my guys, Sarge, he's obviously sergeant, used to be a sergeant. I have a grappling dummy, right? And my grappling dummy used to be in, I have a room in my house that is basically a dojo, and I have a grappling dummy, so I can beat up inanimate objects, right? And they don't talk back, they don't complain. And Sarge almost shot it.
Oh no, dude!
Because my alarm went off. He ran into the house, running around. And he turned into that room and he almost shot the dummy because
dummy sitting there, yeah.
Right. And he was like, bro, you gotta put a gear on that thing because I almost shot the fucking thing. So,
oh God.
Yeah. So it's if zombie apocalypse hit, it's just the network wakes up, man. I have my guys. We have this is when that Jiu-Jitsu family and all the fairly militant and ex-military, look, my academy, I mean, dude, we have like the entire SWAT team, trains there, a lot of police officers, a lot of, special operators, ex-military, current military, you know what I mean? Like that's who trains, that's the network.
Yeah.
Right?
It's incredible.
So zombies would have a hard time with us, I tell you that. We like shooting.
So the question shouldn't be then what would Zoltan do in a zombie apocalypse? It would be what would the zombies do?
What would the zombies do? Yeah, Zoltan, right.
In an apocalypse situation.
Zoltan apocalypse,
Zoltan. Right. Well, Zoltan, that was the final question for the Pummel game, my man. You won. Congratulations. You got your double underhooks.
All right.
So, man, Zoltan, of course, man. Zoltan, I've been wanting to ask you this, man. I've been trying to learn guitar on and off for about 20 years now. And part of my struggle for the first 15 of those 20 years was just understanding how to learn something new. And that's been one of the biggest things that I think Jiu-Jitsu has taught me in my life is how to commit to learning something and how to break it up into digestible chunks and just be comfortable being new at something. Something I've noticed since learning jiu-jitsu are the similarities in how my brain processes learning other things like guitar. I'm curious if it's the same way with you, but the other way around. Do you think that learning guitar and music impacted the way that you learn and process jiu-jitsu?
Yes, 100%. But so there's a macro here, and there's the overall picture. So the big picture of this, so that the philosophy again, that the bird's eye view on this is that everything, not just martial arts and music, but everything in the universe accords to the same rules. There's a general rule. This universe is intelligent. Everything accords to a specific rule, and by elimination. I grew up in an atheist country. Like I never been in a church until I was 20 years old, and even then I went to see as a museum. So the communists eradicated all that. So there was no any kind of religious education whatsoever, and so it wasn't a concept. So it's not a part of my makeup, So I don't have those elements built in, which I realized later in life, like, oh my God, generally the majority of the planet, people and their psychology is based on some kind of, one or another religious sort of base, right? And I don't have any of that. I don't have any of that. So I this heaven and hell and guilt and all this thing doesn't even exist to me. I can't even process that because it was never built in. But later in life, through meditation, through yoga, through spiritual practices, various, again, Tibetan, Hindi, Mesoamerican, all this stuff, right? I came to a conclusion that there is no other way. This is all conscious, right? There are rules, even the rules of physics. When we say like this or that breaks the rules of physics, no, nothing can break the rules of physics. You didn't understand the rules of physics. When you say something broke the rules of physics, it broke your theory, not the rules, right? The rules are unbreakable, right? And so there is a set of rules. There are geometry, and and the latest science is going now realizing how important and how geometry is, the basis of all. Geometry is sacred, and so. But if you look at all this, you realize that there is a general consciousness. There is this. This is intelligent. This is by design, and I'm not declaring God, because God and the word God has a connotation. There's a flavor to it. Everybody will think of different of what that means, and even sometimes somebody asks me like, if I believed in God, and I would say like, I don't believe in what you think God is, because you could not possibly know that. So your idea of what that is what you're asking me, and it's 100% I don't believe in your idea of what that is. You cannot know that, right? So, so I that's why I don't necessarily use that word, but I would use universal consciousness, or just this. This is definitely intelligent, and it's by intelligent design, and there is a pattern, right? You can look at the Fibonacci numbers. You can look at sacred geometry. Again, there are very, very incredible patterns, right? And if you look at everything, even for physiology, right, everything accords to those patterns, right? And so when we translate that into this physical existence, and let's say music and jiu-jitsu, well, music in one way, I feel like as a musician, I'm manipulating the essence of the universe, because the essence of the universe is vibration. And by me manipulating that as a musician, I am actually playing with the source. The source is vibration, right? So everything exists because of vibration, right? And there are specific patterns, and there is specific rhythms and harmony in these universal patterns. So when being a musician, I'm playing music, what am I doing? I'm manipulating sound, which is vibration, right? The audible spectrum of vibration. Everything is vibration. This is particle, the audible. So it's the 15 hertz to 18 kilohertz spectrum, right? And within that, I'm manipulating how these notes and how these vibrations, what kind of patterns they form. So in some way, it's also geometry, because all those vibrations draw geometrical shapes. Like you can look at cymatics, and cymatics will show you this. And so, and what is music? Rhythm, harmony, flow. What is jiu-jitsu? Rhythm, harmony, and flow, right? So I know it's a little bit of a jump, because again, as a musician, I'm manipulating a spectrum of this overall vibration, the audible spectrum, but I am playing with the source of the universe. And as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, in an indirect way, but it's still rhythm, harmony, flow. And you are dealing with somebody's range of motion, and those range of motion is decided by your body. Your body is decided by those universal patterns. The proportion between your digits of your finger to your hand, to your forearm, to your body, the size of your head, everything is according to a very specific proportion, right? So in Jiu-Jitsu, I am in some way attacking, that proportion, right? And bending, or I'm looking for the balance. Like we talked about the Kazushi, even then, right? There's a balance, right? And that's immediately becomes physical because of, physical from a scientific perspective was balance, right? And then I am disrupting your balance, right? So to me, everything is the same. Once you understand the patterns and the rules, it doesn't matter if you're a musician, a snowboarder, a jiu-jitsu practitioner, whatever it is you do, you're gonna find the same patterns and proportions in that, right? And if you understand those proportions, it's gonna be extremely. It's much easier for you to do whatever you want to do, right? Because jiu-jitsu or music or snowboarding is basically the surface skin, the three-dimensional materialized skin over the universal consciousness's rules that are presented to us in this universe that we have to abide by or operate by, right? So there's a rule set. There is gravity. There is, there's motion. There's inertia. There are all these rules, and how they affect each other, the trajectory of things, and their mass, their inertia, all these things, right? So you can look at a snowboarder and scientifically break it down. What happens compared to his speed, weight, mass. You can calculate exactly what's going to happen. You can even scientifically calculate if he's going to fall or not by watching what this person is doing, right? So you could derive it and make it into a mathematical equation, what is actually happening, right? But in a three-dimensional world, it's like the same thing when you play a video game, right? Well, there is not an actual character running around, right? It's a code, right? So it's a mathematical equation running, and everything that you do in a video game, running around, picking up objects, shooting, jumping, whatever, right? That's a manifestation. That's a, in this case, the cyber, manifestation of the simulated physical manifestation of a mathematical equation. Yeah. But really, this person is not running. Right. A code is running. Yeah. Now, you are also a code. I am also a code. A code is running. So if you start looking for the code and you start understanding the patterns, you cannot understand the code with a linearly thinking, limited human mind, but you kind of feel it, right? And you kind of start recognizing patterns. And if you recognize those patterns and you start to look at the source code, how this world operates, then whatever you do in life becomes so much easier because you're looking for the code, what it is based on. So again, if once you play video games, right, you know the controls, it doesn't matter that you're playing a Call of Duty or whatever, pick another game, because the control and how things move and how it operates kind of moves the same, kind of goes by the same, logic. And what is that? That's a source code. And then your ability to interact with the source code, which is, controlled by your abilities, physical and mental, both your senses. I see, I hear, I smell, I feel, and how I process data with my mind. That's basically interacting. So my perception is interacting with the source code. And my perception is to try to understand how this source code works. So if I accepted that I'm not gonna go up in the mountain in the Himalayas and sit there and meditate and think about it all day, I decided instead I want to interact with this world, right? There's an idea of tantric Buddhism, right? Which is started by the first most prominent person was Jetsun Milarepa, right? Tantric Buddhism came into the Western consciousness because the word sex was mentioned. Oh, well, sex is, it's okay in Tantric Buddhism. So that's why immediately let's, well, the idea was Tantric Buddhism was really that anything can be a meditation, like exactly that. Like it's about mindfulness, it's about understanding the source code. It's about, playing guitar can be a meditation. In fact, it is.
Yeah.
Rolling in jiu-jitsu can be a meditation. In fact, it is. So you can use any activity as a form of meditation. So that's really the basis there, right? And kind of that's what it is. Like, again, you're writing the source code, and then you try to understand, and you try to process. And as I said, instead of going into the Himalayas and sitting there and meditating, I've decided this is my path. Like, I can live a conscious, mindful, meditative, spiritual life in this chaos of the world. This is possible if I understand that. Well, playing guitar is a meditation. Think about meditation. That even if you use this word, people immediately thinking of tree huggers in tie-dye t-shirts and all that shit, right? Yeah. Because there's this and also meditation, or these yoga clubs and whatnot. Because if I told you what meditation was, I can do that in 5 sentences, then I can sell you a book or a course. But meditation is actually a very simple process. You know what I mean? It's about understanding that your mind is talking to you at all times. There's this voice that chatters in your mind that, did I close the garage door, and, whatever, right? There's always this train of thought, and it's this chatter in your mind. And so the chatter in your mind cannot be reality, because if the chatter is in a language, right? So you're using a language. So it means you're using descriptions. Descriptions are not reality. Descriptions are descriptions. So if I said to you, well, I was looking at this blue ocean. Well, you have an idea. If you've seen a blue ocean before, you kind of have an idea, but it's going to be your idea of blue ocean. I can't really transmit to you how I felt and what exactly how it looked like. You know what I mean? So I'm using a descriptive, language, right? And there is also that question, like, can you explain blue to a blind person? Well, good luck, right? So words are descriptive. Also, it takes a minute for your mind to process that. So you look at an apple, right? You see what it is. And if you've seen an apple before, then the process starts. You perceived it, then, your neural path, the particles hit your brain, chemical compounds start to assemble, memory gets pulled up, and then now, it's called an apple. You associate the taste, what it is, and all the library, right? The lexical knowledge that you have about an apple is coming up from your hard drive. All that takes just a second. Yeah. But it still takes a second, a microsecond, right? So that means you're a microsecond behind reality, because it's not the actual perception. Now you're in the description part of your mind. It describes what it is. And it's a description. So description can be real, because a description is a description, right? It's a second-hand knowledge kind of, right? Because it describes. So you're always a second or a microsecond behind actual reality. You're not necessarily perceiving the world. And a lot of us lives in the past, thinking about past things or thinking about future things, and not in the present. And with this example, it's actually even more obvious that that's what's happening. I am living in a prescription. So the first step, logical step, I need to stop this voice talking to me, right? Because as long as this voice is talking to me, I'm living by prescription, not prescription, an explanation.
Yeah.
Like this description. I'm sorry, use the wrong word. Prescription could work too, but it's a description, right? Yeah. I prescribed an apple for you, but this is a description. Yeah. So I'm living my life by description, which is, we both know, is not real. It's a secondary knowledge. It's about explanation what the subject is, and it's not in reality. It's a microsecond beyond reality. So the process of meditation is trying to shut down that voice. Now, people use mantras, they're singing, they use, there are these Buddhist tankas with the crazy paintings, right? They're called mandalas, you know what I mean? And then you get lost in the complexity of that. People meditate on chakras, people meditate on sound, and or just full of mantras. And while you're doing that, your mind is not engaging in a conversation, right? But it's very difficult to sustain. And in a second, there's a moment of silence. Your mind is like, oh, there it is. But now it's engaged with you talking again, right? So when you notice it that you're in silence, now it's talking again. So this is pretty much this game with your own mind that you're bending away. You can't engage with it because then it's a conversation. So you're bending away from the images it's giving you, bending away from the prescriptions it's giving you, and a good physical demonstration would be that we could, if we were in the same room, I could ask you like, hey, I'm going to point at certain things in this room and tell me what they are, right? And I'm going to point at, ceiling, lamp, desk, phone, and I start to go faster and faster, and then you can't pronounce the words, and then you can't follow me anymore, right? That's a way that I can demonstrate how I can outrun your mind, because I'm pointing faster than you can follow. So now take it into a meditation setting, and if you can move your mind in a way that you don't have time for your verbal part of your mind that needs time to articulate words, it can't catch up. So now you're creating an artificial silence by keep moving your attention, your mind, and then there will be silence, and that's where you try to go to. That's the state of meditation. And the first spiritual real experience that intellectually it's easy to understand, but when it happens, it's a big deal. It's the first self-realization, the realization of dualism, right? And what happens if you do this practice that I was just telling you, and you start to have silence and longer moments when your mind is not chattering to you, eventually you're going to have this moment of, it's almost like your heart just drops for a second, right? It's an actual spiritual realization. And you notice like, oh my God, I am watching my mind. Then who am I? Then who's the watcher? I am watching my mind trying to engage and talk to me. I am watching it. Then who am I? Then who's the watcher?
Wow.
So this is called self-realization, that you realize I am not the mind. I am not this body. And you can get to this through, ayahuasca ceremonies, MEO5 buffo ceremonies, or a long process of meditation. But there are, or out of that body experience or near that experience, which I had, right? Which is basically putting you in that seat when you're looking at yourself and you realize this is not the full picture. I am now watching my mind, right? And so that's that first real spiritual experience, and that's where the real journey starts. Wow. Of self-discovery, like what the fuck is going on here? What is this thing?
Wow, that's incredible, man. Yeah. Well, yeah, I can appreciate that how you apply that to learning anything. I can see where the parallels are between learning guitar, learning jiu-jitsu, learning really anything. Yeah. So that's really incredible, man. Zoltan, let me ask you, man, in closing, what are some of your major goals for 2023? What are some things you hope to accomplish by the time the year is over?
So 23 it's pretty much, I'm on a road. We actually touring with Metallica, which is a pretty good one. Stadiums,
Incredible.
We played a couple of shows together and we had a good convo. It's kind of like, that's not even a band anymore. That's an institution. That's I don't know, a cultural turning point of the world. That's where heavy metal itself became a thing. It's perfected. Like, this is probably what heavy metal is. If I think of what heavy metal is, I think of Metallica, right? So, highly influential band and the biggest metal band in the world. And, we're doing our own thing, shoveling for 15 years, and we got to a pretty good success. We are a worldwide arena headliner, and then when it comes to the numbers, we are at their heels, when it comes to consumption numbers and whatnot. And interestingly, however, we never played together, Yeah. And then we had a couple of shows in Germany and, basically in Europe. There was Germany and I think in Prague, maybe. Yeah, but there was Switzerland. I don't even remember, but we played 2 shows together in Europe. And so we had a low conversation and, like how we never, crossed paths. And And then eventually this conversation became this 2 years stadium tour. So it's gonna be pretty incredible. Obviously, doing other tours. Metallica is in a situation that they don't have to tour, like we do, or other bands. Like they can play 20 shows a year and they're good. All stadiums. So they're doing this double weekend, like 2 days weekend shows. So it's massive stadium tours, and so it's a Saturday, Sunday, and every Sunday we are playing right before them. So that's incredible. You know what I mean? A lot of people are gonna see us, and we're gonna see a lot of people. So it's a step to the next level from in between we do a lot of other festivals. So generally we're gonna be on the road, and whenever I have time, I'll compete. And obviously I train, but I'll compete. Looking forward to see a lot of guys that I talk to on various social media, jiu-jitsu practitioners that I watch their stuff, and you know what I mean, like both judo, jiu-jitsu. Like I want to go and train with Jimmy Pedro. I'm talking to Jeff Glover, and and a lot of guys that I want to go to. Like let's Tom the Blast, and you know what I mean. There's so Roger Gracie's, and the one of the best ever lived, right? And so I'm trying to train with all these guys when I can, and then also I want to do World Masters. I'm looking at the schedule. It seems like I can. I have to be conscious of how close I am to shows. So like the last year I was playing a show in Texas when the Masters were going on in Las Vegas, right? And I literally contemplated, like I was looking at the time, like, so if I fly in, I do the Masters, do I have time fly back and still play the show?
You have to like weigh your options. Yeah.
That's, what I mean? Like, that's maybe not a good idea. You know what I mean? Like, but I literally contemplated it. Like, man, if I fly private, I can maybe make it back. But look, again, it's like, I'm not, I love jiu-jitsu, but I have a band and a crew and an audience that I owe, everything to. So I'm never going to jeopardize that. But if I have like a week before, or, I have plenty of time that, before a competition, then I'll do it. Excellent. So yeah, I want to do the Masters. I'm going to Pan Am's next week though. I try to compete as much as possible, I love the competition. And I keep repeating, anybody, obviously, jiu-jitsu guys watching it, if you don't compete, go compete, because it just attain this mindset. I'm not going there to win. I'm going there to train myself to a very specific situation. There's no other situation in the world, really, other than real combat, right? Like, war zone, where you're gonna be put in a situation like this, and if you get comfortable with that, then you're becoming a warrior. You can pretty much handle anything in life. And look, even if you're scared, some people scared of going, right? Understand this: fear is a gift. It is a gift because that's the only thing that gives you the opportunity to become brave. Without fear, there are no heroes. What is a hero? A hero is somebody behaving in an unexpected, brave way in a shitty situation. That's what a hero is. Like, become a hero, man.
That's amazing.
Become a hero and become your own hero, right? And so even if you're scared of this competition, right? Then look at it that way. Like that fear that you have of the competition, that is a gift. It now gives you an opportunity to become brave. Get your gi, go to the frigging competition, do it, and keep doing it until you're so comfortable that it's a routine. You walk in like, hey guys, let's roll, let's do this. That's the person you want to be. That's a person you want to become.
Outstanding advice.
So yeah, I'm going to as many as I can. Really, the reason if I don't go, it's really some scheduling stuff, because I sign up. It's funny because on the beginning of the year, right, when the IBJJF puts out the schedule, I sign up to everything. The only thing that I don't sign up, and I know that it's 100% that I am going to be on the road, but I sign up to every competition, and then I see which one I can do. And many times like, I have a video shoot, I have a this or that, I can't make this, and whatever, because once the competition closes, then I can't sign up. So I just sign up to everything. And then whatever I can do, I do. So sign up to, the LA one, right? I sign up to Pan Am's, I sign up to the World. And, there's one in Paris, but it's 3 days before we have a big show there. 3 days is maybe too close. I don't want to, so I was thinking of that. There's one in Barcelona, the European, but it's 1 day after I have a show, you know what I mean? So I'm not sure if I can make it on time. So, but I'm looking at everything.
That's so cool, dude. Well, man,
I love doing it.
Like I said, I find it so inspirational, man, that someone with such a demanding schedule still makes the time to train regularly, train every day while on the road, compete whenever you can. I really think it's awesome. And I really do appreciate all your advice and insight you gave today. This was just one of my favorite conversations I've had on the show for sure. So I really appreciate it, man. Well, folks, unfortunately, we're fresh out of time. Zoltan, man, seriously, this is one of my favorite conversations I've ever had on the show in all my years doing this, man. I appreciate your generosity today and taking the time out of your busy schedule to share your knowledge. Man, we've had some great discussions about just the way you view life is very deep and interesting, man. And I love to see how that translates over to your jiu-jitsu. And man, if you ever want to come back on the show again, you're absolutely welcome anytime you want to come back.
Thank you. It was an honor, and it's like I'm spreading the gospel, man. I love this. I know what it does to people. I know how it can change your life. So anytime there's an opportunity, I can keep going. You know what I mean? This is something I love talking about it. Obviously, as you noticed, I'm not mincing my words. I mean, you ran out of recording time.
It's the best. That's the best kind of conversations, though, man. It's hard when I get short answers. When I get people who express their thoughts and their feelings, man. That's always the best interviews. So I again appreciate you. I appreciate all you're doing too in the world of converting people over to jiu-jitsu, man. Hopefully you're touring with Metallica. That'd be pretty cool to see James or Kirk or Lars in a gi someday. That'd be pretty amazing.
Oh yeah, right.
So, man,
those guys.
That'd be pretty cool. So man, just keep up the gospel and spreading the word of jiu-jitsu out there, man. I appreciate it. And for anyone,
thank you.
Of course, for anyone out there that wants to keep up with Zoltan, it's really easy to do so. He's active on all platforms of social media. His Facebook is Zoltan Bathory Official, and then you guys can also, of course, follow the band's Facebook. It's Five Finger Death Punch. You can follow them on Facebook. Instagram is just his name, Zoltan Bathory. Make sure you guys follow him there. You can keep up with his tour, just stuff that he's got a pretty cool life he lives. So you get to follow along with all the progression of the band and their tours and everything that's going on, plus his jiu-jitsu and competitions. They've got a YouTube channel. Again, his YouTube channel is just his name, just like Instagram, Zoltan Bathory. The website is fivefingerdeathpunch.com. That's a great place to keep up with tour dates, what cities they're going to be in, and of course, if you guys are into metal and you want to see them live, I really do recommend it. They're very well known for having a really, really good live show. So make sure you guys make it if you can. And that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I really appreciate you tuning in. Please stay tuned for the next episode of the BJJ Fanatics podcast.